Well, this time last week, I think I had already cracked open a Miller Lite.
That's
so
right,
we're already
yeah.
off to a worse start to this Friday. And speaking of worse, I don't know what is worse, frankly. My conviction on the Minnesota Timberwolves being good, I should probably say competitive maybe at basketball. Me knowing how many days are in the month of May, or the defense that the Indiana Fever display on a nightly basis.
You had a rough.
Should we go D, all the above, maybe, on what is worse?
You had a rough go yesterday morning, but the Fever had a really bad night, and the Timberwolves absolutely got smoked last night.
God,
that was an ugly night for basketball.
Yeah, I was going to say, that is very accurate. That is the voice of Mark Dykton. Of course, I'm Kevin Bowen. For the second day in a row, it'll be us two co-hosts in here. We'll do that again on Monday before Andy Sweeney gets back from a little vacation. Nathaniel Finch on the ones and twos producing for us today. Yes, an ugly night of basketball, I guess, unless you are a fan of the Dallas Mavericks. And again, over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse, the Fever defensively, it's an abomination, really, to start the season. I go back to, when we had Christy Sides on the day of the season opener. And asked her, what is it going to take to get back into the postseason? She was adamant about the defensive side of the ball being the number one thing. A lot of Matador defense. Yeah, they make the Pacers look like the 85 Bears or the 2000 Ravens with how they play defense.
Well, I was going to say, it might be something in the water at Gainbridge, because I feel like both
Good
teams
point, yeah.
Defensively leave a lot to be desired. But, yeah, the Fever are now 1-8 on the season. It's looking pretty grim, I have to say, that we are now in, wait, is this going to get any better, or is this what the season's going to be? Because they got absolutely housed yesterday, and it was just like, it was one of those ones where you're like, this is a game you should have, or at least you shouldn't be getting blown out to the degree that you were.
That's where I kind of want to focus. It's like, when you hear anybody talk about the Fever nowadays, there are so many immediate runs to the excuses, like right away. It's like, wait, are we not allowed to criticize? I mean, no one thought 1-8. Like, they were an overwhelming favorite to be in the postseason. This is a team that had a nice run to end last season. They won 13 games. Like, they added a generational talent. They've got a number 1 pick and a number 2 pick, not named Caitlin Clark. All of those things. I get the schedule has been difficult. I get that it's front-loaded. But in no way, shape, or form should 1-8 getting run off the floor on a routine basis be acceptable. And I thought you brought up a good point right there, Mark. Of the 9 games they've played 5 opponents. So that means they've played 4 teams twice. Well, if you play a team twice, you would think a young team would be better equipped to see that team for a second time. And that hasn't been there at all. And last night, again, you give up 103 to Seattle. Seattle had not scored that much in a game in 36 straight contests. So absolutely ugly last night in Gamebridge Fieldhouse. The worst defense in the WNBA continues. They're averaging 90 a game on that end of the floor, giving up. No other team in the league allowing more than 85. So one more home game before 3 on the road. Coming up tomorrow, it'll be a little matinee. Angel Reese in the building. You think Caitlin Clark gets teed up by the end of the first quarter or second quarter of that one?
Yeah, I don't know. It might be even money at this point. But, yeah, the schedule doesn't lighten up a little. They have a game tomorrow against the Sky and another one at the Liberty. Then you get a 5-day break before you take on the Mystics. Maybe that's where they can kind of reset.
They're winless, right?
I believe so.
Next weekend, winless.
Yeah, so they have a couple days, because everybody's like, man, the schedule, they have a game like every other day. Well, you get a 5-day break in between games after the Liberty game. So hopefully then, maybe you can reset. But, God, you better not be 1-10 walking in that Mystics game. But we're dangerously close at this point.
We are playing with fire on that. And Greg Rakestraw going to join us coming up 8 o'clock. We'll spray a lot of fields with Rake. It is baseball season from a collegiate standpoint. When you get, and we will finally turn the calendar to June coming up. Tomorrow it is always fun.
It's a bonus day, right, for you?
Bonus day.
Bonus May.
Exactly, right. Yeah, 366 days, in my opinion, this year. I do enjoy, getting a little bit of, it's probably more College World Series centric, but you know what? From a local standpoint, you've got Indiana State beginning there. Baseball tournament run today. Again, they will be in the Lexington Regional. IU made the field as well after some bubble talk for them. They'll play at 1 o'clock today. And a great story down the south side, University of Indianapolis, your alma mater, Mark, making the College World Series for the second straight year. And by all accounts, another Cinderella type of run for them. Their manager already going to join us to close out the show. So we'll sprinkle in a little bit of that, but definitely hit on the Colts because I was out there yesterday for their second OTA viewing of the spring. And I thought, albeit a small glimpse, it was a glimpse into that 21-year-old passing future. And again, it wasn't a huge sample size, but certainly there were a couple moments yesterday where Richardson to Mitchell should make Colts fans pretty excited.
Yeah, like you said in your article on The Fan about the OTAs, you said you wouldn't know that he had shoulder surgery. And you see the videos of him throwing the ball, and the ball just flies out of his hand. Like it seems like it's so crisp, it's so fluent, and it's just like, yeah, that guy shouldn't have been able to throw a football as well as he is right now, coming off a shoulder surgery. But it looks like he's never had an issue. It's flying out of his hand, and it's getting on target, which is another key thing.
Yeah, and we'll hit more on that. There were a couple of guys of note missing yesterday for the Colts, so we'll touch on that again more on the report that happened late in our show yesterday of Pascal Siakam and the Pacers. Sounds like there is a mutual understanding that the max contract will be given. Again, Shams Charania had that report late yesterday, so exactly what does that mean for the Pacers? You know, a contract number north of $40 million financially. How do the Pacers make that work? I think there are a lot of questions off of that. And they have their first draft workout of the year coming up later today. So, again, 3 second-round picks for the Pacers. I'll be curious to see how they handle that. I'm more of a eliminate the quantity, get a little bit more of a high-end quality if you can with that pick because, frankly, they just don't have the roster numbers necessary to use all of those second-round picks. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. You are dressed today looking like I'm about to go teach at IU.
Yeah, they usually say in radio, like, you know, if you're dressed up nice, you're either going to a funeral after the show or you've got some event going on. I have a graduate.
And I don't want to infer, let me be clear here. I don't want to infer that you dress like you're in the Coke lot on a morning basis here. You know, some people.
I mean, it is morning radio, so I'm not dressing I'm not in a 3-piece suit usually.
No, but you
usually
look,
a t-shirt and shorts.
You look good today.
Well, thank you, sir. I shaved. I looked.
Yeah.
Got that going.
What's the occasion?
Emma, my middle daughter, is graduating from preschool. So folks drove down from Illinois yesterday, got a nice meal in Brownsburg. That was a good night. And then we are going to go to the graduation. So I am actually going to be leaving the show a little early today, and then you're going to fly solo. Well, Nathaniel will be here too, so he can keep you in check.
Call me out for Tiger Woods and everything else.
I'm going to leave in a couple hours, and then I'm going to haul ass to Brownsburg and try to get in the door before this graduation ceremony starts. So I was like, well, I should probably look somewhat nice. You know, there's only so many of these graduations you go to. And,
sure.
You know, preschool, it's not, you know, high school or college or anything like that. But, hey, the kids are going to be doing cute songs or something like that. So might as well look somewhat passable.
Not to get too personal, but do we have a Kleenex or two in the pocket?
Not for me, which is probably an error on my part, but I'm sure my mom will have some ready. So if I need to, like, give Deborah Dykton a nudge, I can.
Well, congrats to Emma on that. It's a very proud accomplishment. I'm glad that you were able to do that here to close out the week. Again, that 9 o'clock hour.
You'll be doing the same in a year or two.
Yes, I will. Trust me. There are times I'm like, damn, she's already a teenager.
I know.
We will be having George Bremer on in the 9 o'clock hour. Always enjoyed chatting with George. Covers the Colts on a pretty religious basis. Also has covered a whole lot of the Fever here early in their season. So we can hit on a couple of things with George coming up there. Your Bears on Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
Are we excited? Do we care? Where are you at?
That was the news in the country yesterday, wasn't it? That the Bears are going to be the Hard Knocks team for the summer. I mean, that was the biggest news story I can recall. But yeah, I think I like it. I love it. I am happy to see it because I had heard for years that there was no way, no how the Bears would ever be on Hard Knocks. George McCaskey, the owner, was adamant that he never wanted it to happen. And so now, I don't know if it's the Kevin Warren card or anything like that, but they are going to be featured, and I think they are the perfect team. They've got a lot of hype heading into it. They've got the number 1 overall pick. Matt Eberflus has the flow going with the beard and the hair, so They're looking good. I'm excited. I don't know if there's a better team you could have picked to be the 2024 Hard Knocks participant.
So I needed a little bit of education on exactly how Hard Knocks is going to operate this year, because I'm like, wait a minute, didn't the Giants get announced for Hard Knocks? So fill us in. Giants will be the Giants
Giants
are
are
the free agency draft team, and you guys are the actual normal training camp.
We're the normal training camp team, and then the Giants one, which I was very confused at as well when it first came out. They are a spin-off series, so they are your House of the Dragon, if you're a Game of Thrones person, series, where it's the off-season of the New York Giants. So
the early part of the off-season,
right,
probably.
So it's going to probably go from season end to free agency, the draft, all that stuff. Malik Neighbors getting drafted there. I'm assuming that's what that will be. I don't know how many episodes that's going to be. I don't know how enthralling that is going to be, quite honestly, but we shall see. But yeah, that's in the early part of July, and then at the end of July, we'll be in the actual training camp series. The Hard Knocks that we know and love starts, and that will be the Bears. And then I assume at some point in the fall, we'll get an announcement that there's an in-season one, which
will we be
obviously
getting...
the Colts are a participant in that one. They were the inaugural.
Well, an in-season is going to be a division this year, correct? A full division?
Is that true? I don't know.
I believe that is what I read yesterday. I think, again, we've got 3 different versions of Hard Knocks this year. Ironically, your team and Andy's team.
Yeah.
And the Colts play both of those teams. They play the Bears in week 3, and they play the Giants late in the season. Will we get Caleb Williams maybe painting Emma's nails for her graduation?
I mean, I'd be all for it. You tell me.
Episode?
Sure. Yeah, let's make that happen.
Okay. Sometimes when I see what Caleb paints on the nails, I don't know if you want that on Emma's nails.
Well, I'm sure he can clean it up a little bit. He seems like a good guy. He can clean it up for the kids.
We'll hit on Colts OTAs again coming up a little bit later.
We're not going to have anybody coming in from Hard Knocks like we did before, where my hands are featured. And
I forgot about that.
Look how big time you are. You forgot you were on Hard Knocks.
Jake put makeup on his hands.
Oh, he was nervous about more than on his hands.
Yeah, well,
he had the whole mirror and everything.
He did. Gosh, I forgot about that. He made your wardrobe today look like it was nothing.
Yeah,
he was rocking.
I think he would do the cologne spray where he'd walk through it and like do a spin and a twirl and everything. Yeah, he was ready to go when the cameras came in.
Boy, Caitlin Clark was pissed post game last night.
She should be.
You know, she was clearly frustrated with the officiating. Clearly frustrated with the losing. And frankly, you watch her body language. She's so damn frustrated with her teammates. I mean, some of those, they got some wide open looks in the first half. Her teammates are clanking them. And I mean, she's pouting like Rosie Bowen in the backyard. I mean, it's again, there is context to the 1-8 start, but it is a lot worse than anyone thought. There's no way, shape, or form you can sit here and tell me you thought 1-8 with the worst point differential in the WNBA by far. And I will go back to that. When you see teams a second time, you know, young teams should react better to that. And for example, this week, you saw the Sparks and the Storm in your own building. And, you know, you know, it was honestly LA that played much better against you the second time around, and Seattle, it was much worse. I mean, giving up 103,
I know,
34 in the third quarter last night.
Another 7 turnovers for Caitlin too, so that was.
And
those numbers keep going up.
There's a lot on her plate, and certainly there are some turnovers where she's learning like your ability to thread the needle for some of those plays is not going to be as easy to complete those passes as maybe it was at Iowa. And again, it's not, you know, Aaliyah Boston's been very poor to start the year. I guess Grace Berger did get in last night for IU fans. You got a little bit.
She made parole, is what you're saying?
On that end, yeah. Is she going to wear the Scotty Scheffler shirt that we were talking about yesterday? By the way, listener Kelly did reach out last night and said if we have Scotty Scheffler's address, which of course I have Scotty Scheffler's address, we can send him the onesie. Carly, his wife, is ready to make the onesie and send it to him.
Like I said, we'd have a better chance of getting the Pinehurst P.O. box than I think we would getting Scotty Scheffler's permanent or private address.
Yeah, I kind of rank things right now like this. If you had to rank, you know, Scotty Scheffler's address, getting Caitlin Clark on her show, I would probably rank. We have a better chance of getting a dual interview with Trump and Biden today in studio than we do any of those things.
Well, I don't know if I want to participate in that, quite honestly. I don't know how much talking we'd be doing.
Not today of all days?
Not today, no.
Greg Rakestraw at 8, Indiana All-Stars
against for the 9 o'clock hour when I get out of here.
The Kentucky All-Stars coming up next week. And I was talking a little bit with Rake yesterday at Colts practice. it is a budding junior class of Indiana All-Stars, and one in particular right now is blowing up all around the nation. So we'll talk with Rake about that when he joins us at 8. Again, George Bremer at 9, and around that, we'll talk Colts OTAs and a glimpse into the future yesterday out there at West 56th Street. And still some Pacers talk. Again, they will have their first draft workout today. You've got an All-American on that list, among their list of draft workouts as we start to get into that season. NBA Finals is set. It's Celtics. It's Mavericks. I could not have been more wrong on the effort from the Minnesota Timberwolves last night. I do think Celtics Mavs, I mean, the storylines kind of write themselves with Kyrie Irving and that history, Kristaps Porzingis and that history, and just in general. I mean, you talk about individual stars, Mark. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. Sign me up.
Yeah, you got what you wanted if you're an NBA fan. You got the stars, and you got two of the best teams in the league. And the only problem now is you got to wait till next Thursday for Game 1. So
yes.
The storyline should be plentiful, and they also have to last because you've got like 6 days in between games now. So it's going to be a little bit of a drag, but, you'll get Game 1, and you're like, all right, here we go. So it should be a very good series. They both proved throughout the playoffs that they were the best teams, and so it'll be interesting to see how they say. I did tweet you at one point yesterday and saying, well, I think you can get better than plus 420 on the Timberwolves to win out the series because they got destroyed.
And my response to you was?
You were an idiot.
I went with the Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. We're all wrong.
It's one of my favorite movie scenes.
Oh, how could it not be?
Ma, the meatloaf.
Yeah. What's she doing back there?
I know.
I love it.
I never know what she's doing.
That's such a great movie. I can't believe that movie's like 20-something years old already, too. It's crazy.
It will be a little bit more, a much more sober Friday show than it was this time last week at Carb Day. But nonetheless, we will close up shop here on the month of May with a busy show and a variety of topics. Thanks for closing out the week with us. I'm Kevin Bowen. He is Mark Dykton. Again, Nathaniel Finch with us. Thank you for listening to the Wake Up Call right here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Make no mistake about it, if you don't know.
The Morning Checkdown.
Omaha! Omaha! Omaha!
On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Greg Rakestraw in 10 minutes. We'll get more into the Colts OTAs coming up. What were the takeaways from yesterday? Certainly the 21-year-olds had a couple of highlights. Speaking of highlights, Mark Dykton, I guess really the only ones would be on the offensive end of the floor last night over at Gainbridge Field.
Yeah, another ugly one by the Fever. 103-88 loss to the Seattle Storm. Now 1-8 on the season, 0-4 at home. They've yet to win in Gainbridge. That is not good. Nalissa Smith, 23 points for the Fever. Caitlin Clark, 20 points, but 7 turnovers again. So those turnover numbers still high. Caitlin Clark, after the game, talked about the bad defense that the Fever have displayed these first 9 games of the season.
Yeah, definitely the third and the fourth, or mostly the third quarter is kind of where we lost the game. I just thought our defensive rotations were bad. Like, we were good in the first rotation, but the second rotation was just never there. And, when you give up that many points in the second half, it's going to be hard to win. So,
Caitlin Clark had 20 on 6 of 17 shooting, 9 assists, 7 turnovers. Probably fortunate they don't keep a stat for her defense. She played all but 4 seconds in the game. Again, a double technical for her. Christy Sides got teed up. You can feel the frustration boiling over. You watch that post-game press conference, and rightfully so. That's a pretty pissed-off bunch right now, as they should be. So tomorrow at noon, Angel Reese and company in town. That's the Chicago Sky. The Fever will then play in New York, I believe, on Sunday in a back-to-back, and then they'll finally kind of be able to catch their breath, which I think a lot of people just believe that, and their schedule has been extremely front-loaded, that opportunity to catch their breath will serve them well. Certainly they need that, and having the winless Mystics on the schedule next week probably helps as well.
Yeah, Angel Reese in the Sky is a game you would circle at the beginning of the season. Like, that's a good one, but I don't think any of us would have expected.
Right?
Yeah.
Tomorrow at noon?
I don't think any of us would have expected them walking into that game at 1-8.
Speaking of expected, I certainly expected the Minnesota Timberwolves not to look like, what was the G League team that Lance Stevenson played for this year for the T-Wolves?
I'll have to look that up. I don't remember.
I think it might have been in Iowa, now that I think about it. What a horrific effort last night by the Timberwolves. I could not have been more wrong on that. The final score is not an indicator at all of how ugly it really was. Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, outstanding in closing out Minnesota. So they lose all 3 home games in that series. Lose that series 4-1. And as Mark said, open up the show. Now it's a week-long break. Thursday, June 6th. That will be the start of the finals. It will be in Boston. The Celtics are a slight favorite. I should say a little bit more than a slight favorite to win the NBA championship. But again, we'll get a new champion here based off what we've had over the last handful of years in the playoffs. So looking forward to that.
The Iowa Wolves are who Lance Stevenson played for.
Thank you.
We were debating whether or not to do show remotes from there.
We were thinking about that, yeah. And then Michael Grady made a couple Lance references when we had him on last week.
Luka Doncic, your series MVP, unsurprisingly, by the way.
No. And again, the offensive individual talent in the finals will be terrific. All right.
Our baseball teams stink.
Our baseball teams are not very good, but your Cubs, I feel like, have lost more than my Reds lately.
They've lost 7 of 8, and yeah.
Is it that bad? Wow.
Yeah, they lost. Well, they had 3 games against the Cardinals. 1 got washed out, so they lost those 2 games. They lost 3 out of 4 to the Brewers. So yeah, now they
are the Brewers this good?
I don't know. I don't want to think that they are. I think that they're missing like their best closer. They traded their best pitcher to Baltimore. I don't know. I don't know what to make of them. They got rid of Craig Counsell. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on with the Cubs either. They do take on the Reds this weekend, so I don't know if a show bet is in order.
Spider-Man meme it. Should we go 6-pack?
Sure. Why not? Because one of us will probably need it by the end of the weekend.
Here you go, Nathaniel.
You got a handshake.
Oh, God, I have to reach so far.
6-pack. It's a 3-game series, I assume?
I think so.
Gosh. Speaking of baseball, college-wise, you'll get underway here in the NCAA tournament for local teams, 3 of them from the state of Indiana in the postseason. IU will be in the Lexington Regional. They play today. I want to say that's a 1 o'clock game for IU coming up against Southern Miss. Again, Indiana State, a lot of people thought they were snubbed from being a regional host. They will take on IU is in the Knoxville Regional, now that I'm looking at this correctly here. So that is Tennessee, of course. it will be Indiana State in the Lexington Regional. They've got Illinois today. And Evansville, shout out to the Purple Aces. They will be in the East Carolina region. That is the final of the 16 regional host, Evansville making it as well. And again, we'll talk a little UIndy baseball to round things out as they have made the College World Series.
Yeah, last but not least, I think, I don't know if there's much else going on. The Bears are the Hard Knocks team that will be the training camp participant this year. And also, Jalen Waddle got paid by the Miami Dolphins yesterday after we got off the air, an $84.7 million extension, 76 of that guaranteed. So they have a very expensive wide receiver room down in Miami.
The Colts will see the Dolphins coming up this year inside of Lucas Oil Stadium. And again, the streets of Detroit coming up on Sunday for IndyCar as they are back on track later today. Practice this afternoon, qualifying tomorrow afternoon. I believe green flag is 12:30 on Sunday for that race. Again, as we mentioned yesterday, Tom Blomqvist benched by Meyershank Racing, Elio Castroneves in the car for the next 2 races there. All right, on the other side, Greg Rakestraw, Indiana-Kentucky All-Star Game. It is a budding junior class here in the state of Indiana. Plenty to hit on with Rake. We'll do that next.
A slow network is no network for business. That's why more...
Greg Rakestraw going to join us here in a few as we kind of put a bow tie on a lot of our Indy 500 related content. Mark, I saw a couple of stats that really caught my eye yesterday in relation to the 108th running of the 500. Marshall Pruitt, who does a great job writing for Racer, he had a couple of notes that kind of stood out to me. Again, we talked about this. 16 leaders, that is a new record, 16 leaders in the race. 7 first-time leaders, the most since the inaugural Indianapolis 500. How about our guy Santino Ferrucci? He is the first Indy 500 driver in history to finish in the top 10 in each of his first 6 Indianapolis 500s. And then to kind of show the parity you saw, and probably a little bit more the different strategies as well in the field, if you go to the back 4 rows, so rows 8 through 11, those drivers led 51 laps. That's the most we've seen in 50 years. So it just goes to show you a wide variance and parity throughout the field dating back to Sunday.
Yeah, it was a fun race for sure because you had a lot of lap lead changes and everything like that, so it was a very fun race. To talk more about that, though, we'll head to the Payless Liquor hotline. He's a garden hose of information. You put him on the lawn, he could spray to all fields. He is Greg Rakestraw, and he joins us now.
You ever been called a garden hose, Rake?
No, but that's a very Midwest way of saying font of information, so I appreciate that.
That's right. Well, Rake, you were at the 500. We know this because I was keeping track of your Twitter shots. Was that a record for how long personally you were at the track in one day?
That is a record just because the only other race that I was a part of at that facility that was kind of finished at a similar time would have been the year that Casey Kane won the Brickyard, and I want to say that was 19. I think that was the final oval race before we went road course racing for NASCAR for 4 years, because that thing finished when it was basically dark. But the difference is that we weren't doing a 3-hour post-race show, and you weren't fighting traffic of about 345,000 people to leave. Take the 3 out of that, and that's about how many people were. So it wasn't exactly that bad to get out of the facility. But again, any sort of delay that anybody had to leave the track on Sunday was worth it, because I thought that was a win for Indianapolis, a win for logistics, a win for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It was an amazingly, wonderfully long day at IMS last Sunday.
What time did Greg Rakestraw put his head on the pillow that night?
Oh, at some point around midnight. We signed off at 10:45, and it took me about 50 minutes to get home, and normally I live 15 to 20 minutes away from the track. So by the time I got to 38th Street, traffic was fine. It was just because for me, it's going up Georgetown as taking it to Lafayette Road and then back on Georgetown to get to 56th Street is how I get back to the Palatial Radio Ranch in Broad Ripple. And obviously from where we're at doing the show, I can see how traffic is moving in the infield. It took until about 10:15, literally 2 hours after the race, for you to really see movement of cars trying to exit the speedway.
That is the voice, of course, of Greg Rakestraw, ISC Sports Network. He joins us here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Rake, on the annual June calendar for you, it's a lot of baseball-related activities, certainly soccer as well. But the annual Indiana-Kentucky All-Star Series will commence next week. I feel like the schedule has changed a lot here in recent years. Can you update us on what the 2024 version looks like? And probably a reminder to our audience of just how loaded, frankly, the junior class is here in the state of Indiana.
Correct. So there are actually 5 doubleheaders that start on Sunday, and we as ISC will broadcast the 4 that take place in the state of Indiana. And so Sunday afternoon, Scottsburg's Meyer Gymnasium, Indiana Juniors versus Kentucky Juniors. Last year there was a futures game that was added, and that took place at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That has now been moved to a separate site and a separate date. So on Monday night, Indiana freshmen and sophomores, North versus South, will play each other. That's at Hamilton Southeastern. On Wednesday night, Indiana Juniors, Indiana Seniors, that's at Kokomo, so kind of a send-off game for Flory Badunga. And then Friday night, the game in Kentucky this year is at Lexington Catholic High School. We won't be doing that. There will be a video stream for the folks from Kentucky that they are producing that. And then I'll get to spend next Saturday night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse for Indiana versus Kentucky. And it should be a couple of pretty good games on Saturday night.
part of that loaded junior class, Rake, and I believe you have a connection with the father of one, Braylon Mullins. Boy, you want to talk about a recruitment blowing up. I feel like in the past week I've seen Kansas, North Carolina, and UConn all offer the Greenfield Central product. For those that have not seen him play, could you describe his game a little bit? And is it a surprise to see this recruitment reach national status?
No, because the kid's that good, and given the local schools, and by that I mean Indiana, Purdue, Notre Dame, and throw Butler in there as well. I'm not sure Butler's ever been that strongly in on Braylon, but at the same time, this junior class, now about to be senior class, is that good. I mean, it's just we had a group now 3 years ago, it'll be 4. In terms of the age difference once these kids get to be seniors. But think about the quality and high-level major kids that didn't make the All-Star team in 2021. You've already got a kid like, Blake Wesley playing in the NBA that was in that group. The amount of major kids in 21, kind of a similar thing this time going around for this group that would be 25. But no, every Power 5 seemingly in the last week or two have offered Braylon. 6'4", 6'5", strong kid, fantastic shooter, and you can tell his dad was a player. So my connection to Braylon, Josh Mullins played for us on our NCAA tournament team at IUPUI back in 2003. Was an outstanding player from Greenfield Central, and that's where obviously family lives now. Dad works in the sheriff's office in Hancock County, so they are Hancock County through and through. And Braylon, along with guys like Trent Sisley, Xavier Robinson, Desmond Briscoe, Julius Gizzi. I'm sure I'm going to leave a player or two out. It is, again, just a tremendously deep class, these kids that are transitioning from being juniors to seniors.
One more on that front, and it might be more gridiron related than basketball related, although I think there's chatter of him potentially doing both, which is not something you typically see. Yep. That would be Mark Zachary from Ben Davis. Rake, everybody, from the Ben Davis area that's talked to me about it is like, this kid is a flat-out stud. And they honestly mean, I think, basketball on top of that. He commits to Notre Dame last week. Obviously, I'm beyond thrilled about that. Like, is Micah Shrewsbury going to have him on the basketball floor as well? Like, is this something he could pull off?
Yes, absolutely he could. Now, they have a current, I'm sure there's more than this, but they have one that I know of. They have a two-sport kid at Notre Dame in Drake Bowen that was an outstanding play. Again, your cousin from Andrea.
Correct,
we talked about before on the air. Right. Unfortunately, his baseball season this year, because I had to prep for a game of theirs that never happened against Butler, I think he had played like 3 plate appearances. And so I think his baseball days are about over. He'll be focusing on football. But could Mark play at Notre Dame? Absolutely. Does it hurt in this case that you've got a coach from Indianapolis that knows everybody involved from both the football recruitment standpoint and from a coaching standpoint over at Ben Davis? Because obviously, as you well know, Micah being a Cathedral guy. So I could very easily see he's recruited for football, and I do think that his post-college days, he's an NFL cornerback. He's that talented of an athlete and that talented of a player. But could he be an ACC basketball player? Absolutely he could. And do I see those two programs potentially working together if Mark's wanting to do it? Absolutely, that could be the case where he could be, I would say, likely a part-time basketball player, say a basketball player in January, February, and March, and then go right back to spring football after that.
He's the great Greg Rakestraw. He joins us on the Payless Liquors hotline right now. Rake, want to switch from the diamond to the pitch. What is the status of the MLS bid for the city of Indianapolis, and where does that leave the 11? Because it's been kind of quiet on that front. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I'm not sure you have enough time for this answer in the remainder of the show. There was a city county council committee meeting earlier this week in terms of passing a second stadium revenue taxing district, and that passed. It goes to the full kind of council bid coming up in the next few weeks, and then it kind of goes from there. Again, this seemingly from the city's perspective would be for an outside group and not for the current Indy 11 organization. And so there is still a lot of ground to cover. And even if there is a second taxing district approved and the city aligns with a different ownership group that is not the Indy 11, it is by no means a guarantee that an MLS franchise will be coming to the city of Indianapolis. And so the most honest answer to your question, Mark, is I have no idea. What I can tell you from the Indy 11 perspective is this. Things from an on-field standpoint have never been better. The Indy 11 just completed on the men's side an unbeaten month, and not just draws. I mean, won everything. 4 league matches, won them all. 2 U.S. Open Cup matches, won them all. They have gone in the span of about a month from being outside of a playoff position to being third in the Eastern Conference. And so from that standpoint, things are tremendous. The women's team, who won their league championship last year, have played 4 matches, have won 3, and they've scored 25 goals in the first 4 matches they have played so far this year. So that standpoint is going exceedingly well. So from an on-field perspective, things are great. From an off-field perspective, again, it's an Indy 11 organization that has tremendous roots. That's what happens when you've been around for 11 years. And you know, the academy process and things like that are going tremendously well. It's just this whole stadium deal that I think most thought was a done deal clearly wasn't. And so I think they're trying to plug away at that as best they can. But thankfully, it's not affected the on-field performance so far of either of these two teams during this kind of 2-month, 3-month carryover where both teams are operating simultaneously.
Rick, I know it doesn't have like MLB history, the MLS, but you know, I think a concern we've always had with Major League Baseball, and hey, will Indy ever get a team? There's so much Midwest saturation. If you look at the MLS, you do have teams: Cincinnati, Columbus, Nashville, St. Louis, Chicago. Is that a question that, I don't know, maybe the MLS would have, or you know, even Indy would have, of, you know, can we, given the MLS footprint already there in the Midwest, you know, is it sustainable to put another team into this geographic region?
That's not the same issue that it would be in Major League Baseball, because in MLB you're trying to fill 81 dates. Home soccer, you're trying to fill about 17 to 20 dates. And again, you're looking for a crowd of 20 to 25,000, not trying to fill a baseball stadium at 35, 40,000 and doing so 3 to 4 more times in terms of sheer volume than you would be in soccer. It is also more of a culture, and again, it's different in the States compared to other countries because it is so much easier to travel to an away day match, like say in England. Like if you watch Welcome to Wrexham or you watch any Premier League match, you see visiting supporters at every match. Well, that's because one of the longest drives you would have there is 4 or 5 hours away. Here we're like 4 or 5. That's nothing. And so, you know, and to bring it back to the Indy 11, you see Indy 11 fans, usually a handful, more to the lines of dozens to a couple of hundred if you're going down to Louisville, but you'll see this Indy 11 Brickyard Battalion side where you go, we'll follow, because there's usually a visiting fan or two at every game. So I actually think geographic proximity actually helps because it makes it easier for fans to go to all of these Midwestern locales. And just as the Indy 11 are hoping that they're going to have a new downtown footprint and hoping for a chance to play in Major League Soccer, frankly, Detroit, which has a tremendous, you know, fan base, and it's kind of come up from a smaller semi-pro level to now the same league as the Indy 11, you know, they've talked about buying a new, closer to downtown location to build a stadium and for them to potentially make a run at Major League Soccer. So I really don't think that would be a hindrance to Indy getting an MLS bid.
He's Greg Rakestraw on the Payless Liquors hotline. Rake, I don't mean to bring the mood in the room down, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Scott Allen, the longtime MC for the 11, the Indians, the Fuel. I'm not sure how often your paths crossed throughout the years, but if they did, could you share any of those moments after we lost Scott earlier this week?
You know, amazingly, our paths didn't cross, and let me explain why. Now, we knew each other, but when I do an Indy 11 game, we actually set up opposite the press box. And the unique reason for that is that the press box at the home of the Indy 11 is set up at the end of the facility because it is meant to be there for where the track athletes would cross the start-finish line. And so when we do an Indy 11 match on television, we're on the opposite side. We're in the middle of the suites, and I kind of liken it to almost a basketball announcer's position. I'm 4 or 5 rows up from behind the team benches and at a much lower level. We also do it that way. That way the cameras are showing the more full grandstands than the suite side of the facility. So Scott and I would not see each other, even though he has been really a part of the Indy 11 for the last several years. And he has been one of the rotating public address announcers. Sean Sullivan has been the primary other one. And again, for those that don't know, Scott tragically died in a car accident on Monday. And he perished. The accident was just outside of Bloomington Normal, Illinois. The reason he was there is literally he had just moved or was in the process of moving because the owners of the Indy Fuel, the Hallett family, now have a new ECHL expansion franchise that is starting next year in Bloomington. And the Halletts and the Fuel organization thought so much of Scott as a person. He was going over to basically run the day-to-day operations of the team. And so he wasn't just some announcer guy saying, let's go Fuel, and I'm not going to try to imitate the way that he would say it because he was very unique in how he would do it. And Lord knows he said it all the time during the course of the games out there at the Coliseum. But they thought enough of Scott to go basically be one of the first employees of a brand new franchise. Literally, there had been a going away party for him, I think, end of last week, this weekend. And makes the move and is killed in an automobile accident. So did I know Scott all that well? No. He and I actually had a few conversations over the last few weeks about is there potentially some partnership work that could be done over in Bloomington. But I will tell you that virtually everybody that I know that knew Scott had nothing but wonderful, glowing things to say about him. And so it's terrible that he's no longer with us, but to think that literally he was just getting ready to start a new life over there, and it ended almost on one of the first days he was there is pretty mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, just an awful, awful story. I mean, Rake, I said this to you earlier this week when we chatted about it. You certainly know this. Mark knows it, takes his family to a lot of those types of events. When you go to an 11, a Fuel, an Indians game, the fan experience is 90% of it. And he was such a big, big part of that. And, I mean, vivid images. Certainly Fuel games is probably what stands out to me the most about his energy level. But, yeah, to say he will be sorely missed would be an understatement. All right, busy schedule for Rake coming up here. Again, Indiana, Kentucky All-Stars. That you can feel or see a lot of that on the ISC Sports Network, and a lot of baseball and soccer here in the month of June. Rake, as always, man, thank you. Great run into yesterday.
You got it, buddy. Take care, fellas.
That's Greg Rakestraw on the Payless Liquors hotline. Where I ran into Rake would be West 56th Street. Colts OTA recap. We'll share that coming up on the other side. The 21-year-old certainly had a highlight or two. We'll talk about that next. It is the wake-up call here. 93.5, 107.5. Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Nathaniel Finch on a Friday.
Alex Scott was a young cancer patient.
7-5, The Fan.
Earlier to what we said, about when we drafted him, the explosiveness that he, goes off the ball and wins one-on-ones. I mean, he's been making a ton of plays out here the last couple of days. Really good to see those one-on-one winners. So he's going to bring an element to our offense that we're really excited about.
That right there, Shane Steichen on rookie AD Mitchell yesterday after the Colts' second open OTA viewing of the offseason. It is the 8 o'clock hour here on the Wake Up Call. I'm Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, and Nathaniel Finch with us here as we close out the week. Andy Sweeney will be back on Tuesday. Some high praise, Mark, from Shane Steichen yesterday. And, I thought, I guess, a little context around those comments. Jonathan Taylor out due to personal reasons, should be back next week. We recall Michael Pittman Jr. banged his knee last week. He observed from the sideline. Shane said yesterday if it was a regular season week, he would probably be practicing. So, you were down a couple of your obviously notable offensive players. And, I don't want to act like, Mitchell caught, 7 balls, but in a couple of different periods, he certainly made some plays down the field. And I think that's what you're looking for this time of year. Can your young guys consistently string some practices together? And again, we don't watch every single day right now, but in the days we've been out there, AD Mitchell has certainly stood out.
Yeah, you mentioned one of the highlights of yesterday was Richardson connecting with Mitchell on a deep shot down the field in between Darrell Baker Jr. and whatnot. That was a pretty highlight reel catch, I assume. And so since you are out there, you're saying, does he have the breakaway speed that they've been missing? Like the break-off speed, a wide receiver, deep threat that they can actually rely on that they've not really had the past couple seasons?
Yeah, I think the outright breakaway speed maybe isn't as apparent. What has stood out to me is wow, he is creating separation.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I think you can do that in a variety of ways. You can do that with your speed, of course. You can do that with size. You can do that with, really precise route running, all those things. Play-wise yesterday, both Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco. And by the way, shout out to Joe Flacco. Sounded like he hit up a local driving range after practice yesterday.
Oh, nice.
He was very friendly to some young junior golfers.
Good.
Out
You
on
like
the
to see
range
that.
yesterday. So thank you to Joe Flacco for doing that in his new hometown, if you will. But both Richardson and Flacco took, I would say, several shots down the field. And that is going to be much more of a staple in this offense. And they were unable to connect on a couple of them down the field. But then in a 7-on-7 period, you got AD Mitchell lined up one-on-one with Darrell Baker Jr. And Richardson threw a great ball over the top, and Mitchell made a terrific over-the-shoulder catch, and AD Mitchell made sure to let the defense know about said catch after the play. And then in the very next period, Mark, it was an 11-on-11 session. After Richardson's day had mostly consisted of kind of dink and dunk with the running backs and tight ends, he finds Mitchell on a comeback route, kind of a 15, 18-yard comeback route. And so to me, that's kind of what stands out. It's, okay, here's a deep ball, here's a comeback route. He flashed at rookie minicamp. He didn't really do a whole lot in our first OTA session when we saw it last week. But again, yesterday, you saw a couple of plays. So I just thought yesterday it was a glimpse into your future. Your two 21-year-olds, your quarterback and your wideout, 3 months separated. That, to me, was my eyes seeing what kind of the Colts envision with AD Mitchell. And again, Steichen's comments go back to Reggie Wayne's comments from last week, and I posted that on 1075thefan.com. The Colts are not shying away from public praise for AD Mitchell. Some coaches opt for the, oh, you got to earn your stripes. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're going to play the tough guy card. It's a lot of yeah buts, when you do talk about your young players, particularly your rookies. They really haven't done that with Mitchell. So that has also stood out to me. So, yeah, I would say yesterday the DBs definitely made some plays. I don't want to act like it was, the passing offense absolutely roasting the secondary by any means. I don't think that was the case. I thought they actually forced a couple of sacks. I say that in quote, in 7-on-7, making Richardson flush out of the pocket. But there were certainly a couple of moments for AD Mitchell to impact.
What you mentioned right there is something I was going to ask you is, in your notes on the OTA practice, you mentioned that there was times when Richardson was flushed out of the pocket, aka sacked. In those situations, are the coaching staff letting him run around and try to find someone downfield or make a play, or are they having him dirt it? The play's dead.
Yeah.
This would be a sack any other time in an actual NFL game. How is that going? Because I'm always curious with that, especially with young quarterbacks, if the coaches are reining them in, saying, no, that's not going to fly on Sundays when the games are on the line.
Yeah, they do let them play it out. Scramble drills, I think, are a part of it. Now, granted, again, no one is chasing him, so
Right.
it's hard to exactly replicate or simulate what you're going to see on Sundays. Obviously, that's a part of Richardson's game.
Mm-hmm.
His ability to do that. I think in an ideal world, 7-on-7 is just deliver from the pocket and move on. It's quicker rhythm, I should say. It's a very timing-centric drill, and I think whenever a quarterback gets flushed out of the pocket, the thought is the defense is won.
Mm-hmm.
The defense is not supposed to defend outside of the pocket because, again, it's just linebackers and DBs out there. They have no D-line to rely on. So that's probably an aspect of Richardson and the passing offense you'd like to see a little bit more in sync if you're going to look at it from that end. But, again, I will echo what you kind of brought up to me in that opening segment of, for a second straight week, you could walk out to the Colts practice field and have zero idea that Anthony Richardson missed 6 months due to a right shoulder surgery. The workload is exactly what you would expect from a starting quarterback this time of year. The velocity on his throws, you don't see anything different. The length or the distance on the throws, nothing. I mean, he was uncorking deep ball attempts yesterday rather endlessly.
It's like a flick of the wrist, and it just goes flying.
So I think
wild.
all of that is super, super encouraging. Again, without Taylor, it was a lot of backup running back reps. I do think that is kind of a sneaky position battle. Is it Trey Sermon? Is it Tyler Goodson? Evan Hull was a rookie that got hurt in the season opener last year. 5th-round pick out of Northwestern. How does he factor in? I think that is there's not a lot of offensive position battles, but I would say that is one just to keep an eye on. Backup running back, it can matter a whole lot given the nature of that position injury-wise. And then tight end. I thought it was another nice day for Jelani Woods. And his health, of course, is paramount after what happened to him last season and missing the entire year. And someone just has to emerge out of that tight end room.
How many years have we been saying that now?
It's like, can you clone Jack Doyle again? But Jelani Woods has strung together a couple of nice days in front of us, and he's adamant that he feels he said yesterday he feels more explosive than he did as a rookie, which, of course, since then he dealt with the hamstring issues.
With that running back room, I do think it's a sneaky position of concern is probably too strong of a word, but of interest, I would say, heading into training camp, because you have Jonathan Taylor, obviously. You don't have Zach Moss anymore, so it'll be interesting to see how they exactly approach that. Is that going to be a situation where they are fine with the guys that they have in the room? Is this going to be a situation where they have to go to, once cuts start happening around the league, they pick a veteran up or something like that for a minimum contract or whatnot? Because obviously last season you had to rely on Jonathan Taylor's backup for a decent amount of the season, and you obviously just wanted to give him some rest here and there. You weren't running him out every down. So I'll be very curious to see if they feel comfortable with the guys that they currently have, or if this is something that's going to develop once we get to training camp, where we're like, we might have to go elsewhere for our backup running back.
Boy, yes, I hear you out of that. And I know this is not necessarily the path you were going down, but I think the thing that I am most bullish on about the 2024 Colts, the thing that I think is going to be a dynamic element to their football team, I would say one of, if not the best in the league at this, I think the duo of Richardson and Jonathan Taylor should be the best quarterback running back duo. You could probably make a case for Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. You can make a case for Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, but that dynamic nature to Richardson and Taylor, it should be explosive as hell. And
the options alone, when you do option plays,
exactly right.
Having defenses having a game plan
Shane
for both
Steichen's
of those on the run,
foaming at the mouth at the possibilities there. And of course, the domino effect off of that, Mark, is the plays you saw A.D. Mitchell make yesterday. Those one-on-one opportunities are going to be there. Now, Darrell Baker Jr. is not going to be the opposing corner, when you're facing your Bears in week 3 or whoever. So, but still, those matchups on paper, a one-on-one chance will be there. Now the question is, can you cash in on that? Boy, I was just thinking about this. The defense in town, you mentioned there's something in the water over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse for the
Pacers and the Fever.
I mean, could you throw the Colts in there? They were 28th in points allowed last year. Well, why do the professional sports teams, I guess maybe Rake said Indy 11's had some clean sheets lately. Maybe they don't deserve to be in this. I feel like the Indians are giving up a lot of runs.
Yes.
Is there something in the water here locally with our professional sports teams?
Maybe
the Fever can't guard, the Pacers can't guard, and the Colts can't keep teams out of the end zone.
Maybe it's a lack of water because the Olympic swim trials. Maybe they've used all the water.
Look at that.
That could be it.
I didn't think you were going there.
We might have just figured it out. We had to crack the code here. on this Friday morning.
We're going to have a guest on next week to talk more about the U.S. Olympic swim trials inside of Lucas Oil Stadium.
I'm not kidding. I want to go in that pool. Can we get out there?
Like, you want to race?
Well, I don't know if I want to race. I'd like to just, like...
Jump in?
Yeah. Do some cannonballs. Do something. Get out there, do a couple breaststrokes or something. See who can hold their breath the longest.
Is Lily...
You a nose plug guy? You wear nose plugs when you go swimming?
I can't say I wear nose plugs.
You don't need the... Well, you have...
Is that a thing?
I guess. You have do you need the hair cap now that you got the glorious PAI?
I guess I swam with Rosie and Max a couple weeks ago, and I didn't know. The hair cap should be a nice touch, though. That did not come in my We Grow Hair Indy package when I was exiting there.
You might have to talk to Darren Andrews about that.
Only a matter of time, right?
Yeah. Have the branding. That way you look like Michael Phelps out there. You have the PAI logo on the side of the hat, and you do your breaststrokes the other side of the Olympic pool.
Fill me in on the nose plugs.
Well, I just remember as a kid, there'd be the mom at like the community pool or something yelling at the kid, "Put your nose plugs on," and like the kid would have to put it on, so the water didn't go in the nose. I'm just like, hold your nose. Why do you need?
Same kid gets bullied, so it's mom's fault.
Yeah. It had the rubber band around your neck.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. It wasn't like a puka shell necklace, but it was just a nose plug, and you put it on and. The kid would dive in the water, and that way the water didn't go up the nose. I was never one of those kids, thank God.
Will your daughter Emma be getting nose plugs for her graduation of kindergarten today?
No, they do swim like fishes though. You go to anywhere water, and they're good to go for a while and everything. So no nose plugs for the Dykton household, thank God. But I do remember seeing that as a kid. I'm like, that's a tough scene right there. I don't know about that, but wasn't sure. I wasn't sure how you went, but I was just curious. But yeah, I would like to get out to that Olympic pool at some point. Just
2 weeks from tomorrow it begins. And yeah, I mean, some of the pictures from it are awesome. I'm looking forward to just hearing more about the logistics of having an Olympic-sized pool in an NFL stadium. And
I believe it's 2 Olympic-sized pools.
For those unfamiliar, like the U.S. Olympic trials, I mean, it is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Especially the swim trials. A massive deal, 9 straight days over at Lucas Oil Stadium, primetime TV, all of that. So again, we'll hit more on that coming up next week.
And we've got tickets given away, not only today, I believe next week as well, to the Olympic trials.
4-pack, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we'll do that here coming up on the pop quiz in a little over an hour. Again, the Colts will have their final week of the offseason program next week. It'll be more of a daily watch for the Colts. So, again, takeaways right now, Mark, I'm always like, I'll share them, but I want to make sure, like, they've had 6 OTA sessions and we've watched 2 of them. So that means that we've missed, obviously, over half of them, and other stuff can be happening, in those sessions. So starting next week, the Colts will not have a closed practice until the regular season gets here or training camp ends. So, we'll get to watch 15, 20 straight practices, which, again, just allows for a little bit more conviction, a little bit more, context behind some of those takeaways. The Pacers will have their first draft workout today. Of note on the 6-person list, Houston's Jamal Shed, All-American guard there. I mean, honestly, do you remember when he went down in the tournament?
Yeah.
Sweet 16 game against Duke, he goes down. And honestly, if he doesn't go down, I mean, I guess it's a little slap in the face at NC State, but that could have been Purdue's opponent in the Final Four. It could have very easily been Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars there. So they've got 4 forwards and 2 guards in for their first workout. And again, Mark, they've got picks 36, 49, and 50. My thoughts on utilizing those are this. You don't have enough room to spend those 3 draft picks and think they are going to be on your roster. So I would like to see them package a combination of those picks and move up. But I think everyone's just written off the draft.
Yeah, everybody's like, there's nobody in there. Nobody knows who any of these guys are. They're all, European players.
And I'm not that. Like, I mean, hell, no one knew who Ben Shepherd was last year when the Pacers took him. And look what Ben Shepherd did at pick 26. Obviously, Andrew Nembhard is the poster child of I think he was the first pick of the second round, so 31. So,
who's this Jimmy Butler guy? Guys.
Sure.
What is Nikola
Jalen
Jokic? How do you say that?
I get there are the big names, but even if you just want to live a little bit more in a dose of reality, look at the Pacers here in the last 2 drafts. Shepherd at 26, Nembhard at 31. So the opportunity is there in this general range to find some quality, and if the reports are true about Pascal Siakam and the max contract, your finances are about to get pretty tight.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to make sure that even in lottery filled or even first round pick years, that you still have an opportunity to hit on a draft pick. I mean, look at Boston's team. Sure, we talk about their whole starting group, but arguably their most important player off the bench, Peyton Pritchard, is a guy that was, selected kind of in this general range. So again, picks 36, 49, and 50 for the Pacers. I don't know if I'm necessarily married to a position by any means, but I think packaging that, moving up a little bit, and just finding some player that could fit into your rotation, you don't want to slam the door on that at all.
You open to if you package all 3 picks to get into the first round? Or
Sure, yeah. That works. I mean, hell.
Because like you said, the roster, the Pacers are pretty much set roster-wise for the most part.
Even if Obi Toppin walks, Mark, I guess Jalen Smith has a player option. He could be gone as well. Theoretically, Jarris Walker would obviously slide into more minutes there. But it's not like they've got 7 free agents that you'd put them in their top 12 guys. Or even, there is a little bit, when you start to kind of map it out on paper, there's a little bit of a logjam in some areas. So that's where I look at the return of Benedict Mathurin and think, again, higher quality over all the quantity.
Yeah, I totally agree there. So it'll be curious to see how that works out with them. Obviously, like you said, the first draft workout going on, there will be plenty to go on, and we'll see if there's some local ties coming to some workouts maybe. We'll see. I don't know. But
they usually sprinkle that in.
Yeah, usually I feel like it's always at the end. They bring the local flavor in.
I'll be curious if Zach Edey works out for the Pacers.
Yeah, me too. I think that would garner some interest for you. Can I throw some odds to you to circle back to the Colts? You were very adamant on the show yesterday that you did not like the plus 420 of the Minnesota Timberwolves to win the season.
Aren't I glad I didn't back that financially?
I'm very glad you didn't do that. I'm happy you did not do that.
What an idiot. Well, I'm such an idiot.
I mean, you were
yesterday was arguably the worst show I've ever had.
I'll clip that for you, Mark.
I thought May at 30 days. I think I butchered 10 other things.
That was right
in
out
the
of
open.
the gate too.
Yeah, I was horrific yesterday. It's a miracle people have tuned back in on this Friday morning.
Give yourself more credit than that. No, but I wanted to throw some more odds to you, specifically those of Anthony Richardson when it comes to comeback player of the year odds. I feel like there's some value there. Obviously, he did not play much last year. We all know that and everything.
Now his
like
backup is the reigning comeback player
Correct.
of the year, right? In some areas.
I wanted to throw some odds at you and see where you lie, because the comeback player of the year is actually pretty stacked. Like name recognition wise, there's some guys out there. So the favorite to win comeback player of the year, unsurprisingly, Aaron Rodgers at plus 100. Number 2 behind Rodgers is
Do you have any thoughts on that?
He can go pound sand. I wouldn't vote.
Are
for
you
him.
rooting for a Rodgers torn Achilles in week 1?
No.
Be
I'm
honest.
Not, no.
Do we need to hook you up to something?
No, I'm not rooting for injury. I just hope he gets pasted on every primetime game and he's like, what am I doing? I'm 40-something years old. Why did I think I could still do this? Is that vice president offer still on the table? Stuff like that. But Aaron Rodgers, nonetheless, plus 100 on the comeback player of the year odds. Number 2, Joe Burrow at plus 200. Third, behind Burrow and Rodgers, Kirk Cousins at plus 500. The 4th best odds to win comeback player of the year, yours truly, Anthony Richardson, plus 750. Are those good odds?
Yeah,
Are those not great odds?
I mean, those are great odds, honestly. I think I'd sprinkle that.
Others on the list?
10 to win $75?
Well, let's see where you think Richardson is at compared to these other guys. The rest of the ones that I have in front of me, Russell Wilson plus 1,200, Deshaun Watson plus 1,500.
Wait, what's Russell Wilson coming back from? Sucking?
Sucking, I guess, yeah. Being ass in Denver is what I would guess that they would put in the apostrophe in the parentheses. Plus 1,200 for Russell Wilson, plus 1,500 for Deshaun Watson. Again, sucking and injuries. Nick Chubb injury, plus 1,800. Justin Herbert with Jim Harbaugh as head coach, plus 2,500. Daniel Jones, 2,500. Tank Dell, 2,500.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
where would you put your money on that?
I think Richardson's got good value. The issue is if Rodgers has a pulse at the end of the year, he's probably going to win it. That's just how.
What if he's Peyton Manning in Denver the last couple of years, though, where they were winning, not really because of him, but
I mean, that would be different.
Him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Burrow. I mean, Burrow's such a huge name.
Yeah.
by all
It's
accounts.
a loaded comeback player of the year.
Yeah, it is.
List when you look at it, you're like, wow, I forgot.
You are right. I just think Richardson is, I've used the word volatile to kind of describe the variance in the Colts this season, and I don't know if maybe that's the best word to use because, like, with Gardner Minshew last year, hell, the Colts won 9 games. But I just think the Colts have a much higher ceiling, I guess, than other teams. Now, again, the floor could be lower if, Richardson's, the thing with Richardson is I feel like he can hit a lot of home runs for you. It's just that the at-bats that he strikes out on, it can't, you need to end drives kicking the football. Rigoberto Sanchez needs to be coming on the field, not the turnovers or, here I'm trying to make a Houdini-type play and boom, I, turn it over in a critical situation, which, to be fair to him, I know he had the pick in his first game against Jacksonville on that fourth quarter drive, but I don't think we saw a lot of that in his small sample size. But, I would think for plus 750, sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
I feel like the Colts are kind of a, sneaky under the radar team around the league because
I just think the AFC is loaded with depth.
They are. It is, but they won 9 games last year with Gardner Minshew at the helm for the most part. And now they're coming back with a Richardson that looks completely healthy. You've got Jonathan Taylor back in the fold right out of the gate. And, yeah, the AFC South itself has gotten more difficult with what the Texans have done and whatnot. And the Titans, are reloading, and the Jaguars had an odd year. They look to be ready to go. But, yeah, the AFC South in general is really good. I'm curious to see what it's going to take to crack, like, what the last wild card spot in the AFC is going to cost, like, as far as win total. Like, you have to get probably double digits, I would think. 10 wins probably is going to do it, but I don't know. There's so many good teams in the AFC this year that I don't know. The Colts should be better than their 9 wins last year. I think they left a couple games off the table because of some defensive lapses for sure. But, they should be right in the thick of it, I would think. But, yeah, they definitely seem like nationally they're going on the radar just a bit.
Where are we at on our Hard Knocks curse? Are we do teams that do Hard Knocks, do they make the postseason?
Well, what was the last year was the Jets. Obviously, we know how that went.
That ended swimmingly well.
Yeah. Well, the most action that team saw was in Hard Knocks. Who was it before that? I'm trying to remember.
The Cardinals.
Well, that was in season though, wasn't it? Wasn't that in season?
Yeah, I guess we have all the different versions now. It's kind of hard to parse out. I remember saying this a couple years ago with the Colts, and again, the Colts were the first ever in season Hard Knocks.
Mm-hmm.
I am such a fan of any behind the scenes content. Anytime you can, pull that curtain back of, hell, that's part of my job. And the fact that you can do it for an hour episode weekly, I think is tremendous content. Even if not all of it, maybe you're learning, maybe not all of it is the most enlightening stuff. I think to the casual fan, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think obviously it's lost a little luster these days just because it seems like every digital team teams have made their own. But as far as like uncensored content and just an hour of uninterrupted footage of like a team that you're following through camp, you get some great insight in there.
I thought the Colts did one on Shane Steichen back. I don't know, this was probably about a month ago, and the first minute of the video, and it was primarily of like, this is Shane Steichen off the field, and in reality, it's just yes, he's somewhat of a normal human being, but more than anything, the dude is just absurdly passionate about football. But the first minute was post-game locker room Houston Week 18 scenes.
Mm-hmm.
It was that raw footage from a loss. We're used to the Colts winning a game. Yeah. You do it quite often, Mark, with our re-entries on the Monday mornings after Colts games. When Colts win, you oftentimes will put in the post-game locker room, type of, footage of, Steichen going nuts and, players going nuts, et cetera, et cetera. It is so rare.
A song by the owner sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. We Will Rock You song from Coach Irsay. It is so rare to get loss footage. And so I am, and I know Hard Knocks maybe necessarily isn't that angled to it, but again, it is behind the scenes stuff. So I think it's great. Good for your Bears.
The year before the Jets, by the way, the team that was the training camp participant was the Detroit Lions. That was pretty good.
The Fighting Campbell's first year?
Yeah, uh-huh.
And they just missed
lose
it, right?
Their first 10 games that season?
Was that bad?
I don't think it was that bad, was it?
His first year it was.
I'm picturing them beating Green Bay the last game of the season to keep Green Bay out of the playoffs. Was that not that year? Has Campbell been there longer than
Maybe
that?
It was that season.
I think it might have been. They just went on a run late in the year. I think they lost their first 8, 9, 10 games.
I'll have to look that up. I don't remember. But that was a fun Hard Knocks season. The Jets was fun, I guess, last year. And then
yeah, lost their first 10 in 21 and then came back the next year.
So there was 2022 was the year that they were Hard Knocks.
Well, yeah, when they were 9-8, that's when they beat Green Bay there in week.
It should be fun. I'm intrigued. I was hoping that the Bears would get it at some point. I was always told it was never going to happen with ownership and all that, but clearly things have changed, and I think that should be a very good entry in the Hard Knocks lineage. So we'll see. Should be good, though. I'm curious to see. You said in-season is supposed to be
Giants.
A whole division?
Oh, yeah, excuse me. Yes, whole division. Giants in the offseason, Bears training camp, and then they will do a whole division. I don't think that has been announced yet, who that division would be.
I feel like that's going to be pretty easy to sniff out if you start seeing Hard Knocks HBO cameras on sidelines during the season. That should be pretty fascinating. That's a good way, though, I think, to do it, though, because then you get perspectives of the teams that are at the very top and the teams that are fighting for any sort of like relevancy late in the season. I think that could be pretty entertaining, actually.
You did not need a Hard Knocks episode to feel the frustration and, frankly, the pissed-off nature of the Indiana Fever last night, and understandably so. Let's hit a morning check down.
The Morning Checkdown. Omaha! On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
There's another rough one for the Indiana Fever. Now 1-8 on the season after getting blown out by the Seattle Storm 103-88 at Gainbridge last night. Caitlin Clark, 20 points, but 7 turnovers. Melissa Smith led the Fever with 23 points and 10 rebounds. After the game, though, Christy Sides beside herself.
I just think we've not had the practice time. That has a lot to do with it. 103 points, it's just too many. We got to get back. We got to find some time to practice to get back to just our shell defense. Just working on, we got to be in help side, then we got to help the helper. That was one of the things we talked about in the game.
That was now the 5th game of the season where the Fever have lost by double digits. They lost by 15 to the Storm. They've lost 19 points to the Aces. They lost to 11 by the Liberty, 36 by the Liberty, and 21 by the Suns. So they are getting blown out, and it's not been pretty. The Fever get back on the court tomorrow when they take on Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky at noon, and then after that they have a back-to-back, and they take on, I believe, the Liberty again.
Honestly, I think the only thing that's improved for the Fever through the first 9 games is Christy Sides' voice sounds a little better.
It sounds better, but I don't know.
Hey, I don't think it's Tom Allen bucket game level.
I'm not sure how better it's going to get if they don't start winning. It's not going to get any better, I don't think.
It's a 40-game season, so the quarter point is Saturday. That'll be 10 games into it. And I hear people talk about the Fever season or Caitlin Clark in general, and it is just immediate Usain Bolt sprint to excuses. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is an awful start to the season. Has the schedule been difficult? Yes. Have they been dealt an unfortunate hand with the amount of games they've had to play? Sure. But you can still sit here and say, this is awful. They're 1-8. They're getting run off the floor on a routine basis. This team closed out the year pretty well last season. They draft a generational player. You should not be 1-8 and you just rattled off the double-digit losses. And I think what stands out to me, Mark, that's frustrating as well, they've played a lot of teams a second time this season. Theoretically, the young team, you face a team another time, you react better to that. And it's gotten worse when they've seen, here this week, the Sparks and the Storm for a second time. Again, Seattle had not scored this amount of points, 103 last night in 36 straight games. It is Matador defense from the Indiana Fever right now. As Mark said, noon tomorrow. They are, just desperate for wins. You got to get to like 17 or 18 wins to make the postseason, and it's a 40-game schedule.
Yeah, they need to get on a heater quick. You go to games, and there's times when you blink, and they're down by double digits out the gate, and you're like, what happened here? And they're just clanking shots or airballing it, and just our passes are just bouncing off fingers and everything like that. It's not been good. So hopefully they can get it right and get it right quickly. Because it can get out of hand quickly.
20 last night, 6 of 17 shooting, 9 assists, 7 turnovers, and some Matador-type defense per usual from her. All right, speaking of ugly, that was certainly my thoughts in reacting to the Minnesota Timberwolves last night. I mean, what was the final? It was like a 20-point game.
Yeah, 124-103 was the final.
That is such a mirage of exactly what it was like. The Mavericks absolutely steamroll Minnesota.
I mean, it was like a 30-point deficit at halftime, and you're like, what in the hell is going on right now?
Luka, outstanding. Kyrie, outstanding. That is the Western Conference representative for the NBA Finals. Again, nothing until Thursday. for this series. It will start in Boston here. You care to make an early pick of the series?
I like that matchup a lot. I'm going to stay with the Mavericks. I think the Mavericks will get it in 6 games.
Look at that. You could get some pretty good odds on that, Mark Dykton.
Better than plus 420, I hope.
I think if you go exactly 6 games, you could definitely get that. But again, we'll have a new champion this year, so our recent run of Raptors, Lakers, Bucks, Warriors, Nuggets will continue, whether it's the Mavs or the Celtics.
I just feel like the Celtics haven't really been challenged in this postseason. Like, I don't want to sound like bitter Pacers fan or anything like that, but I just feel like even the games that they won, the Pacers were right in it. They haven't really they didn't really step on anybody's throats. They're always kind of just the games are always kind of like up for grabs until the very end that they kind of like got lucky there and there. So I'm taking the Mavericks. I will take the Mavericks in 6 games to beat the Celtics.
All right, up in Detroit, IndyCar back on the streets today. They'll have a practice this afternoon after the course of the Indy 500 wrapping up. Qualifying tomorrow afternoon, and green flag scheduled for around 12:30 on Sunday. So again, that will be the IndyCar race in Detroit. Week off, Road America. That's what the June slate looks like here for IndyCar. A couple of other notes. Mark, the Cubs continue to lose in baseball. We have put a gentleman's bet of a 6-pack of beer on the Cubs and Reds series. I think it's one of those bets of someone has to win, right?
Someone has to win, and someone's going to probably want to drink after the weekend series is over with. So.
Or shotgun, which I think, honestly, I think this time last week, Andy Sweeney had just taken his Patron shot.
Oh, God, I can't believe he did that. That could have gotten out of hand very quickly.
I really like that starter fuel. Is that what he called it?
That's what, whoever was there that handed it to you guys was like, drink this. You're like, all right, sure.
Now, it was in a plastic container. You got nervous that I might never see the light of day after that.
I was concerned, because if someone's offering you a drink at the carb day, yes, thank you, and then you have to kind of like make sure the contents aren't like they're safe to drink.
What do you want me go find a science experiment somewhere and parse it out?
Well, I'm just saying, you want to make sure that you're being safe out there and everything. So when Andy's doing shots of Patron at 7:30 in the morning, you're like, okay, well, hold on a second.
IU, Evansville, Indiana State, all 3 of those teams in the NCAA tournament for baseball. They will play their round 1 games here in the regional round coming up today. So a little local flavor from a baseball standpoint. Pascal Siakam, how mutual is the max deal? What would that mean for the Pacers? We'll hit on that on the other side. Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Nathaniel Finch here, closing out the week.
It's JMV and the Memorial Day sale at
Right here yesterday and today and Monday as well. Andy Sweeney at a music festival in Detroit. Nothing sounds better than that. So he will be back on Tuesday with us. Is he going to the IndyCar race?
I don't think so.
I guess if you don't stay for the Indy 500, you're probably not going to the IndyCar race.
Probably not, no. And I don't know how long that musical festival is, but
you could stay with Jake up in Detroit.
Yeah, hit him
Be
up.
a spotter.
Hit him up. I told him to go to Mom's Spaghetti, get some shout out to the new Eminem song, by the way, today. Have you heard that yet?
No, but I can't believe he's still rapping it.
I know.
Figured KB staying up till midnight waiting for that to drop.
Waiting for it to drop.
I honestly should have. Yeah, woke up the whole family and let them know. Yeah, this is time to gather around the fireplace and listen to some Marshall Mathers.
Listen to the oldies. Come here. Rosie.
This
grab a
news
seat.
item came late in the show yesterday. And Sham Charania from The Athletic NBA Insider said this. I'm told there's a mutual interest between the Pacers and Pascal Siakam in getting a deal done this offseason. And the Pacers understand it'll take a max level type contract to keep the forward, who will be an unrestricted free agent. To put that in a little context, Mark, if indeed that comes to fruition, I believe that max deal would be right around north of $40 million annually. I think there's still some discrepancies on exactly where that would be. So if you're talking north of $40 million annually, again, to put that into little Pacers content perspective here, you add up the contracts of Benedict Mathurin, Andrew Nemhard, and Aaron Nesmith for next season, they are half of Pascal Siakam's annual salary. So this is where some of the lukewarm nature that I have had comes into play here. I think he is extremely gifted offensively. And frankly, there were probably times where I didn't give him enough credit for his ability one-on-one to make plays. And he definitely helps the Pacers. I don't think I'd be naive to say that, he's hurting the team. And I think it's important in the NBA to show your stars that you're willing to swing. And I think you did that with Tyrese Halliburton.
Mm-hmm.
Halliburton, by all accounts, is a big, big fan. But the value of that contract at that age, when defense and rebounding are the biggest issues, and it's not like you're saying, hey, you're similar size as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, go guard them. You're not saying that.
Yeah.
And it might be recency bias, but I just thought too often in the second halves of Games 3 and Games 4, when you need your $200 million max guy to make a play for you, I can't recall one play Siakam made in the second halves of those games. And so that stands out to me as well. It is a big old number.
Yes,
big
it
old
is.
number.
Yeah, and it's the cost of doing business in the NBA in 2024.
Sure.
And I think they knew ahead of time before they made that trade, we're giving up a lot of draft capital here, and we also know that we're going to have to pay a freight ton of money to Pascal Siakam to keep him here. I think the front office felt comfortable enough pulling the trigger. I don't think anything in the postseason changed that fact. Obviously, Rick Carlisle said it was his number one priority to make sure Siakam re-signs with the Pacers. So they seem more than comfortable. Fans may not feel the same way, but if people in the organization are comfortable with having Pascal Siakam back and at that price, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to bring him back.
Yeah, and I think
they can offer him the most money out of anybody in the NBA by a large margin. So I don't think there's any chance he's signing anywhere else.
MP brings up a good point here. I'd be interested in giving Siakam a 3-year deal, nothing more.
Mm-hmm.
I think timelines play into this, and I get that you're looking, far ahead, but if you're mapping out, hey, you want to re-sign Nemhard at some point, you want to re-sign Mathurin at some point, paying Siakam that amount of money at 34 and 35, I mean, that's going to look pretty darn ugly. For those that missed it, this was Pascal Siakam after the Game 4 loss to the Celtics on his, albeit at this point, short stint here in Indiana.
All I can say is that, it's been a blessing. I'm really appreciative of everything, coming from where I come from, it means a lot. And the support that I've received here, is something that I was kind of missing, and having, all that, and seeing how a city just breathes basketball, and just how much support they give to the team, just being here, the home games. I mean, it's incredible. How would you not be a part of that? So I think for me, I'm just really blessed and happy for how this has been, and I think that in terms of future, whatever happens is gonna happen.
I do think Siakam deserves a lot of credit, Mark, for how he's wired as well. I thought he offered some great comments post-game, not just that, in talking about the need to make sure you don't be content or you aren't complacent with where the Pacers got to, and basically thinking that this is going to be a common occurrence. Like, oh, yeah, the sun rises from the east, and now we're going to be an Eastern Conference Finals team on an annual basis. So
it was a nice veteran perspective from a guy who's been in the playoffs a ton in his career to give a young team, like, don't take this for granted.
Right.
This isn't going to happen year in and year out.
And again, I think that's important when your stars have that sort of mindset. And again, I think Tyrese is wired in a way that you would like as well. So, basically, I just think, I wanted to give everybody kind of a reminder of what this would do for the Pacers. We had Alex Golden on earlier in the week, and we'll probably try to have Tony East on coming up next week. And again, he is so cap-centric. But, this sort of extension it eliminates any cap space for the Pacers. And that taxpayer mid-level exemption, I think Alex said to us, and we looked it up, I think it's just a hair under $13 million. That would be an avenue where the Pacers could add. But, basically, if you're trying to add moving forward, and I guess just live in this offseason here for a second, you would have to part ways with some of those younger guys in the deal to do something on that end. And that's where I get into a little bit of this Andrew Nembhard debate, Mark. And, part of me wants to kind of make a letter grade analogy of, we just watched Nembhard be an A- point guard in Game 3 and Game 4. Like, extremely high-level point guard, what you watched. Well, if you want to play out the letter grade stuff here for a second, let's call him a B- shooting guard. I think we saw a sample size for a decent amount of time. B-, hell, I don't know if you want to be critical, maybe C+, but let's just go with a B- shooting guard.
End of the school year, you want to give him some credit.
Yeah, exactly.
Points.
We got Emma graduating from preschool today. The question that I would have for the Pacers is this: he's a shooting guard for you, or he's your second unit point guard. So if he's a B- shooting guard for you, but a team views him as an A- point guard, if they're willing to give you A- value at another spot, that's where you've got to listen to the trade offers. And again, I think Nembhard is a really, really quality player. I don't view him and Halliburton as like Turner Sabonis. Like, I don't think it is, you've got to move one of them if you want to have any sort of future growth. I just look at it as a possibility to even raise the ceiling further of, if you have a question right now about the small forward position, or the 3-and-D is a common phrase you hear with what the Pacers are lacking. And if all of a sudden you can move a Nembhard, who, again, your value for him might not be as immense as another team's value for him, and that other team is willing to give you an A- player at the 3-and-D spot, to me that almost seems like a win-win.
Yeah.
That there are some Sabonis Halliburton vibes that I get in such a hypothetical trade. So, I think I've said this on several occasions this week, but I just want to reiterate it. Any sort of trade talk from other teams inquiring about Nembhard, you would be foolish not to listen to them.
Yeah, and he's obviously, fans like him. He's a fan favorite. It would be a bitter pill to swallow if you ended up dealing him at some point. But if you're getting, like you said, A- talent for him, you have to be listening to those offers. You can't just say, no, he's our guy going forward, whether we put him at shooting guard or point guard, wherever, or he's coming off the bench to relieve Halliburton or something like that. You listen to any offer you can in this offseason. I don't know if there's any untouchables necessarily on this roster, so that's the way you're going to have to be doing stuff, especially if you re-sign Siakam. The financials just aren't going to be there, so you're going to have to make these kind of trades or get guys at like veteran minimums or in the draft. That's how you're going to have to do this once you sign Siakam to an extension, because the money's just not going to be there otherwise.
The Pacers have their first draft workout of the year today. There is an All-American on that list. We'll share who that is on the other side. Kevin Bowen, Mark Dykton, Nathaniel Finch on the wake-up call here on a Friday.
A slow network.
George Bremer, one of my favorites, covers the Colts, does a great job, and he honestly has been on the Fever beat quite a lot this year as well. He's going to join us here in about 10 minutes. Mark, I kind of forget if this happened during the show, or I think it might have been right after, but Jalen Waddle for the Dolphins signing a big old deal yesterday. You look at the Waddle contract. You look at earlier this week with Nico Collins. I mean, Michael Pittman Jr., he's going to slot in like 15 or 16 among wideout contracts because we still have extensions for Justin Jefferson, C.D. Lamb, Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk and that drama. There's a whole lot of that still to play out.
Yeah, he's 11th at the moment, and that's before all this other stuff happens. Yeah.
Yeah, again, he's going to fall off that list. I do find the Waddle thing interesting because I think there are some out there that would say, remember our Jonathan Taylor trade saga last year? Remember, if there were any teams that had, I would say probably the most public interest was Miami. And I do think there was an inquiry from the Colts, and I believe quickly shot down from the Dolphins about one Jalen Waddle.
You want who?
For Jonathan Taylor.
Click. Yeah.
So the Colts will see Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and company inside of Lucas Oil Stadium coming up I believe it's this October. Yeah. That might be the most marquee home game.
It might be. Yeah. I mean,
October 20th, that is.
Yeah, and like that wide receiver, that is an expensive wide receiver room with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That is wild. And then they're still going to have to work out a Tua extension at some point, too. So I don't know how they're paying all this money in Miami, but it's going to be pretty interesting to see how they handle it.
Well, their defense clearly has had some issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, for those who missed it yesterday, Colts OTAs, there were definitely a couple highlights between Anthony Richardson and A.D. Mitchell. We'll talk more about that with George Bremer coming up in a few. Mark, for those that have missed it, you are dressed for success today. You care to share why?
Yes. In about a minute or two, I'm going to get out of Dodge, and I'm going to leave a little early and let you and Nathaniel finish out the show. I'm going to run down to Brownsburg for my daughter Emma's preschool graduation, so that should be very fun. Parents are in town.
Is Emma ready? Is she ready?
She's ready. She loves her teachers though, so it was kind of sad because she wants to see them.
She might be more emotional than Dad today.
Maybe. I don't know. Shout out to my oldest too, Addison, finishing up first grade today.
Nice.
So yeah, summer begins at 3:45 today in Brownsburg. So should be fun. Should be emotional. Should be just cute kids doing cute songs and everything like that. Get the tissues ready, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, Rosie is not going to kindergarten next year, but a couple of the kids in her class are going to kindergarten next year. So remember yesterday or last Friday when I was like, hey, carb day, I can't be staying until, whatever, Thorogood and the whatever comes on stage here. I got to skedaddle out of here. And I thought the songs were very creative.
Yeah. Yeah, you are shocked that at that age they can retain that information and know all the dances and the movements and everything like that. Yeah, they'll butter you up at those things, and they'll make you reach for the tissue box because they hit the emotion strings.
Nice M&M cookies, which was needed after a couple of lights. Again, I think at this point last week, the Patron shot was going down the gullet of one Andy Sweeney, and the 9 o'clock hour was getting ready, a little bit more sober on that end. But that is awesome. I'm glad that you are putting on the dad hat here, and shout out to Emma.
Yeah, well, thank you for being accommodating and all that stuff. These are the moments that I think, as young parents, we should be there for that. So we will expect the same for you once, your kids go, Rosie and Max go down those aisles and everything like that. So appreciate you guys holding down the fort while I'm out. Shout out to listeners. Thanks for listening. I'll be back on Monday. YouTube psychopaths. Love you guys. Keep it going. But, appreciate you guys letting me bounce a little early to get to this.
Well, no problem at all. So thank you to Mark Dykton. Again, Nathaniel Finch on the ones and twos. 9 o'clock hour, mapping that out for you on the other side. Again, George Bremer from the Anderson Herald Bulletin does a great job covering the Colts. Again, we'll ask a little fever questions as well to him. We will give away another 4-pack of tickets to the U.S. swim trials. Those begin 2 weeks from Saturday. So we'll do that coming up on the pop quiz. And then a great story here locally on the south side. I know Mark and Nathaniel like the sound of one Al Reddy. He is the manager of the Indy baseball team back in the College World Series. It's a hell of a story from a Cinderella standpoint. We've got 3 D1 teams in IU and Indiana State and Evansville in that field. And Indy's already made it to the Elite Eight. That's down in Cary, North Carolina, coming up here later this weekend. So we'll chat with him to round things out here. 9 o'clock hour, putting a bow tie on it. Thanks for spending it with us. It is the wake-up call here, 93.5, 107.5, The Fan.
It started with the
Probably makes sense here as we round out the week. I don't know if Nathaniel Finch did that on purpose. But yes, Mark Dykton off to his daughter's graduation from preschool. Andy Sweeney will be back on Tuesday. So it'll be myself, Kevin Bowen, and Nathaniel on the ones and twos, taking you here into the weekend. And for that, I turn to one of my favorites. He's the man that unfortunately has to sit next to me in the Colts media room from the Anderson Herald Bulletin. He is the one and only George Bremer. Jorge, good morning to you.
Good morning, Kevin. Hey, it's an honor to sit next to you inside that building.
Well, yeah, the feeling is beyond mutual on that. And I want to make sure that I preface by saying we've watched 2 of 6 OTAs. I want to preface by saying the sample size yesterday was small. Honestly, if you were to make me pick a winner of the day, I'd probably say defense over offense. But, George, I did think yesterday in our viewing it was a glimpse into the 21-year-old duo of what Anthony Richardson and A.D. Mitchell could be. Again, small sample size, just a play or two. But I thought on a day when you were missing Jonathan Taylor, missing Michael Pittman Jr., missing Mo Alley Cox, you saw a little bit of that 21-year-old future there out of those two.
Oh, absolutely, especially late in practice. You know, it felt like like you said, the defense won. If you had to pick a winner for the day, the defense had more reps go their way than the offense did. But the one throw in particular, I know that you're talking about, at least 40 yards in the air. Was a little bit to the right, and Mitchell was able to kind of make the adjustment on the ball, making what looked like an easy over-the-shoulder catch. He beat his defender in a one-on-one situation. It's that kind of stuff that, again, shorts, helmets, like you said, only 2 out of 6 OTAs that we saw. But it's those kind of things that help you understand why the Colts were so excited that Mitchell was able to be there for them, in the second round, and why they see so much potential. I mean, I think that explosive speed and just the natural athleticism. He does things that are really hard on the football field and makes them look really easy.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. He's like a good-looking athlete out there. And frankly, the Colts, I think, have several of those, but that's kind of how I would describe A.D. Mitchell so far. Again, George Bremer with us here. Anderson, Harold Bulletin does a great job covering the Colts on a consistent basis among other hats that he wears. George, one more on Mitchell. Are you surprised at all how much the public praise has been there from the Colts powers that be? I mean, whether it is Reggie Wayne, whether it is Shane Steichen, like oftentimes with rookies, I feel like you can feel a little bit of tough love in public comments from those guys. Don't crown them yet, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas with Mitchell, I feel like it's just consistent plates of praise for him. And I almost wonder if that stems from draft night and how that immediate reaction was with some people questioning his character.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's no doubt. Almost every time that we've asked about a rookie that I can remember, as long as either one of us have been around, you get a little bit of praise, and then it's always followed by, but, it's early, or, whatever kind of caveat you want to put on there. And they still got a lot of work to do. You hear those things a lot. And you really don't hear that with Mitchell. And I think there probably is a stance right now where the franchise is saying, look, we don't feel like we made a mistake here. It's interesting, because they traded down in the second round. It's not like, they didn't take him in the first round, obviously. They didn't take him when they were first on the clock in the second round. But at the same time, they seem completely bought into him. So it's an interesting dichotomy there because there were questions. There's no doubt about it. Those have been well documented since he's been picked. But it feels like the franchise really believes they've got a potential star on their hands. I mean, and like I said, from everybody from Chris Ballard down to his position coach, Reggie Wayne, now they're all going to say, ultimately he's got to prove it. You got to go out there on the field. You got to do it on Sundays. I don't know how many times we've seen a wide receiver look outstanding this time of year, even in training camp, and it doesn't necessarily translate to the regular season. But I think there's so much excitement around what this particular player can do because the natural skill is there. The work ethic seems to be there. He's one of the last guys off the field pretty much every practice we've been at. Now he's just got to go out there and do it consistently. All he's got to do is go out there against the best players in the world and do it week after week.
He is George Bremer at GM Bremer on Twitter. He's with us here on the Payless Liquors Hotline. Again, the Colts wrap up their OTAs this week. One final week of the offseason program. It'll be the mandatory minicamp. And again, starting next week, myself, George, we'll watch every practice then, starting with minicamp throughout training camp here as that gets underway in late July. George, obviously, plenty of eyes on Anthony Richardson so far. What have you observed in your first 2 viewings of him since early October?
The ball seems to be a little more crisp. I don't know if that's just because we haven't seen him in almost a year, because of the injuries, but it just seems like it's coming out really well right now out of his hands. He doesn't have a ton of rust. There's a little bit there, which you would expect because, again, October was the last time he was on the field in a competitive situation. But it just feels like everything's a little bit smoother than I guess I thought it would be. You always wonder when a guy's off that long and it's a shoulder injury on top of it, how much time is it going to take to get timing back with your receivers? Is he going to look a little hesitant with anything? And again, they've got to put the pads on. He's got to get hit. There's a lot of more boxes that need to be checked, before you can really feel confident that things are heading in the right direction. But everything out there that we can judge right now seems smooth. It really seems like he hasn't missed a beat. And I think there's just more confidence from him, probably stemming from the fact that he doesn't have, his head's not spinning the way it was a year ago. He knows this playbook. He knows his way around the building. He knows his teammates. There's so many things where he's ahead of where he was last year at this point. And I think you see it just in the way he carries himself, the way he breaks the huddle. The energy and everything that you saw from day one is still there, but it just seems like a more confident, more smooth player at this point in the offseason.
He is the great George Bremer, cover of the Colts among other hats that he wears, and he is with us here on the Wake Up Calls. We close out the week. All right, George, we are still a couple of months away from it, but let's fast forward to 53-man roster cut down time. And if I were to present you that list in late August, how many of those 53 names that will be on the list, how many of those are on the roster right now?
Ooh, that's a good question. That one's always tough too, right? Because we know if there's one thing I've heard from Chris Ballard consistently from day one, acquisitions are a year-round proposition. You never stop adding, and we see him constantly. There could be an addition, in between this break after next week's mini camp and the start of training camp, but there's almost always a couple pickups after the final cut down day. And, there's some positions, free safety comes to mind, that there definitely could be somebody from the outside. I'm going to go with, let's say, 50, because I still feel like, they brought a ton of guys back. They obviously like what's on hand, but there's always a spot or two. I'm going to go with 50 right now.
Yeah, that's I'd probably go a little closer to 53. And obviously there's an injury or two that will inevitably probably lead to, that number being at least one or two new names. But I don't know, George. Maybe it's because they haven't done anything since the draft, which, granted, I didn't think there'd be anything imminent. It just seems like they are a lot more content, optimistic, whatever word you want to use, on cornerback and safety. And right now, Nick Cross is, I would say, probably has the early lead to start next to Julian Blackmon. Jalen Jones, probably opposite Juju Brents. I would call those the early leaders at those spots. I think they're generally a little bit more optimistic on corner and safety than some others are.
There's no doubt, especially corner. It's hard to find anybody that's not, I guess, backing those corners. Everybody you talk to over there talks about, Julian Blackmon said it yesterday. When they're in press coverage, he feels 100% confident and really likes the way those rookies last year, Jones and Brents, look right now, that they've taken steps forward. This time of year, they're not going to throw anybody under the bus anyway, but it feels like they really, like you said, they really have a lot of confidence in that cornerback group, which is interesting because there's not a long resume on the field. The Juju Brents played, 9 games? Jalen Jones played more, but, he kind of he got into the starting lineup after the injuries happened and kind of had to work his way into the fold. And Dallas Flowers has all the athleticism in the world. I think they have a really high opinion of what his ceiling can be, but he got hurt 4 games into the season as well.
And tore his Achilles, not just hurt. We're talking about a big injury.
Massive injury that, for an athlete is really tough to come back from. It's been surprising to me how unanimous that support for those young corners has been. Safety, Julian Blackmon, I think Shane Steichen called him the quarterback of the defense. So I think you feel good that strong safety spot. The free safety spot is open, but like you said, from what we've seen, and we're only out there 1 day a week right now, Nick Cross has taken almost every first-team rep at that spot.
It's funny you bring up Blackmon, George. And again, George Bremer's with us, Anderson Harold Bolts, and he spoke with the media after practice yesterday. And, obviously I think it's fair to say he was a bit unhappy with how his free agency process played out. He would like to have cashed in a little bit more on what I thought was a really nice season for him. It's only a 1-year deal. He re-signs with the Colts. We know the safety market was pretty dry in general here back in the spring. it's kind of an annual thing I do. I'm sure you do it as well, George. If you're going to rank your most indispensable Colts, I'll be honest, I don't know how far I'm getting on the list before I name Blackman. And a lot of it has to do with the lack of depth in that room, the lack of proven depth in that room. But to me, he might be a top 3 or 4 most indispensable Colt.
I think that's a pretty accurate statement. I mean, you look at how young that group is. We just talked about how young the corners are. The safeties are in the same boat. I mean, you've got Kenny Moore and Julian Blackman back there as far as players that have been in the league for a while, players that have seen postseason play. I would say they're 1 and 2, as in that unit for sure. But when I look through the rest of the team, Blackman is involved in so much communication. You really only have to look back to last year. When he got hurt, those last 2 games, there were a lot of breakdowns in that secondary. It's not, it's not like the secondary was smooth throughout the season, but I think you see he's the guy who kind of gets them lined up. He's not necessarily the most vocal guy, although, like you say, he talks a lot of trash, but that's really just from an energy standpoint. But he feels like one of those guys who what you're going to get from him every day. He's as long as he's healthy, you can pretty much predict what he's going to do in almost any given situation. I think coaches love those players because that's your dream, right? You want to know, if I line him up, I put him here, I tell him to do this, he's going to do this. And that Julian Blackman to me is the epitome of that on this roster.
He is George Bremer. Again, covers the Colts for the Anderson Herald Bulletin. Also has been on the Fever beat here. I do want to toss a Fever question your way, George, before we let you go. One more on the Colts front on my end. If I took Latu and I took A.D. Mitchell off the board, give me a Colts rookie you're most curious about.
Ooh, that's good. I'm going to say Matt Gonsalves, just because of Chad Henry's talk with us.
And again, third round, for our audience that doesn't know, third round pick, offensive lineman out of Pittsburgh, banged up his senior year. Bit of a question on where he's going to line up.
Yeah, absolutely. I have no idea where he will line up. Is that right guard? Will he fill in a little bit for Braden Smith at right tackle? Where his future is. But when Chad Henry started calling him the blueprint, your eyebrows raised a little bit. He talked about everything that they look for in an offensive lineman with this franchise. All the boxes they want to check. He feels like Gonsalves checks every one of those boxes. So I feel like he's the guy in this group. Like Latu, for all that we talked about Mitchell, you can say everything about that. It goes for Latu as well. So much praise from everybody in the building, so much energy. I think he was the last guy off the field yesterday. You can see both of those guys, why they were drafted, and you understand the athleticism and the total package with them. Gonsalves, I feel like, could go either way. They have so much faith in him, but the injuries, you're always going to have questions. When the guy's coming in and he played 2 games, I think, as a senior, something really, really small. There's always going to be a little bit of a question mark there. But at the same time, when you've got a scout saying this guy is, prototype for what we want in an offensive lineman, it's really interesting to see what that looks like on the field.
And they traded up for him. I know it wasn't a significant move up, but we know how rare that is in the Chris Ballard era as well. So I think that kind of adds to some of that intrigue. Again, George Bremer is with us here. George, you have covered the Fever pretty extensively this season. I understand that there's plenty of context around this slow start, but I also think it's gone much worse than anyone thought. If I asked you to kind of pie chart it out, blame for the 1-8, large margin of losses, you blame it schedule, defense, coaching, Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark's turnovers, of kind of those reasons, what stand out to you more than most?
Yeah, those are definitely the top 4. I think defense. Melissa Smith said it last night after the game when she was asked basically the same question. What is what's been the biggest drawback for this team? And I think they're averaging a little over 85 points a game, which is plenty good enough. But last night was the second time in 4 home games they've given up more than 100 points. They've got to figure out a way to stop some of these other opponents. But I also think some of that goes hand in hand with the schedule because they've not been able to practice. You're really just going from one game to the next. They had a West Coast road trip in there. And when you've got a young and inexperienced team and you're having those problems on defense, it's hard to fix them on the fly. And I think that's something that it's going to be really interesting this next week. They play tomorrow and they play Sunday. Then they're off until next Thursday. And I think it's going to be intriguing to see what does that look like in Washington. When you had a little bit of time to come back, get back in the lab, get out on the court together, practice together, work on that shell defense together, and you're facing a Washington team that right now is the only winless team in the WNBA. If there's not vast improvement in that game, I think there's going to be even more red alarms going off than there are right now.
And you can feel, you were in that post-game press conference last night, George. You can feel that. I was watching it. That is a pissed-off, frustrated bunch right now. And really, Christy Sides and Caitlin Clark are the poster childs of it. Hell, we saw them both get teed up last night.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Sides earned her key, too, right?
Sure.
I guess congrats to her on that one. Go out there and stomping out on the court, being held back by your assistant coaches. That was a full-on technical foul. But I thought Caitlin Clark before the game kind of mentioned that at this point, she wouldn't use the word demoralizing because if you're demoralized this early in the season, there's probably a problem. And she feels like the adversity that they're going through right now ultimately will help them. It will make things so much sweeter when things do go their way. I don't think anybody, when you looked at the schedule, you knew it was difficult. You knew that the timing of it was tough. You knew that they were playing teams like New York, Connecticut, right out of the gate, Las Vegas, that were going to be tough matchups no matter when you played them or where. But 1-8, I don't think was on anybody's radar. And especially in Caitlin Clark's, case, she's not used to this. I think Aaliyah Boston went through it last year. You go through your college career and you're on one of the top teams in the country, and then you come here and you don't want to get used to losing. And I think that's probably the one thing right now that you can take away from this team. That's definitely not the case. They are frustrated with where they are, but at the same time, there still seems to be honest belief. They believe in the talent that's in that locker room. So I think that's the important thing. When that goes away, there's going to be a major problem. At this moment, they're frustrated. They know they should be doing better, but there's honest belief they can turn this around inside the locker room.
We'll see a few practice days next week. Lighter schedule to George's note if that can open up anything for the Fever. George, I'll see you next week, man. Always enjoy our combos. Appreciate you hopping on with us, taking some Colts questions and a couple Fever ones as well. You have a great weekend.
No problem, man. You too, anytime.
That's the one and only George Bremer, again, at GM Bremer on Twitter. Does a great job covering the Colts. He's one of my favorite individuals. To George's point defensively, right now the Fever are allowing 91 points per game. That is dead last in the WNBA. No team in the league is averaging more than 85 given up. So it's quite the gap from dead last to second to last. And hell, just look at the individual games. They've given up at least 80 in every game but one. And fittingly, the one game they didn't give up 80 is their one win. They beat the Sparks 78-73. So tomorrow, Angel Reese in the building, noon tip against the Chicago Sky. Nathaniel Finch, you been out to Gamebridge at all this year for a practice or a game?
I went and watched the game on Tuesday.
Were you?
Yeah. It was fun for the most part. Obviously, the
that
end
was
of the
Clark's
game.
Career high.
It was. So we picked a good one.
Yeah, that was second half is really where, well, I guess it got off kind of a slow start in that one, but I feel like it was a game of runs, and the Sparks got on a couple runs there late to win that game. Again, on paper, that was a game that they should have gotten. Pop quiz coming up in a few. We'll give away a 4-pack of tickets to the swim trials coming up 2 weeks from Saturday. Looking forward to getting a little bit more into quite the unique venue inside of Lucas Oil Stadium. Next week, we'll have a guest on to chat more about just some crazy logistics involved in putting a swimming pool inside of Lucas Oil Stadium. Again, a feel-good story here locally with the UND baseball program back in the College World Series. Their manager, already going to join us to close things out. Mark Dykton off to the kindergarten, I should say the preschool graduation for his middle daughter, Emma. So on that note, let's go ahead and hit a morning check down.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
All right, we'll begin with the Western Conference Finals. Kevin Bowen, an idiot yesterday, thinking the Minnesota Timberwolves could somehow make this interesting. That was the last word I would use to describe last night. I'm sitting there on the couch, kind of settling in a bit. I'm like, all right, Fever just got blown out. Here we go. Wow, Timberwolves are already down 15. And that just snowballed from there. The final score really is an indicator of how ugly it was. Luka, Kyrie, both with 36. The Mavericks finish off the T-Wolves in 5, so now the NBA Finals are set. It will be Boston as a favorite, not an overwhelming favorite, but a favorite against the Mavericks coming up Thursday, June 6th. So that'll be game 1 for the NBA Finals, so we'll have to wait a bit on that, but certainly storylines abound. Kyrie Irving back to Boston. Kristaps Porzingis, assuming he's healthy, back to Dallas. Some great individual talents. Mark Cuban, Brad Stevens. I like it. I think it's nice and juicy on that. Jason Kidd and Joe Mazzulla, slightly different point guard careers. Do you recall Joe Mazzulla's college career at all, Nathaniel Finch?
I don't.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe he was on the West Virginia team that lost here at Lucas Oil Stadium in the Final Four. My vivid memory from West Virginia losing to Duke in that semifinal. Butler beat Michigan State, and the other was Huggy Bear getting on the floor when Deshaun Butler, I think, tore up his knee, if I'm not mistaken. That was quite the scene from that Final Four. So again, next Thursday, June 6th, Game 1, Celtics at home against the Mavs. All right, last night we mentioned it with George. Fever get waxed at home. They go up 103. The Seattle Storm hadn't scored 103 in 36 straight games. Shout out to the Notre Dame duo of Skylar Diggins-Smith and Jewel Lloyd for that effort. The effort lacking defensively. Caitlin Clark after the game on that end of the floor.
Yeah, definitely the third and the fourth, or mostly the third quarter is kind of where we lost the game. I just thought our defensive rotations were bad. Like, we were good in the first rotation, but the second rotation was just never there. And, when you give up that many points in the second half, it's going to be hard to win. So,
yeah, frankly, their defense makes the Pacers' defense look like the 85 Bears with the effort on that end of the floor. So, ugly, 103-88. For what it's worth, Clark individually had 20 points on 6 of 17 shooting, 9 assists, 7 turnovers. So that turnover number continues to be at a very high level. Christy Sides certainly committed to playing Caitlin Clark a whole lot. There's been some questions about how much time Clark has spent on the bench. She played all but 4 seconds in the game. For those fans wanting to see more of Grace Berger, she played a lot, 23 minutes. Again, there were some injuries, and Erica Wheeler out due to a personal issue. Berger played 23 minutes, had a nice plus-minus, didn't really do a whole lot stat sheet-wise, but we'll see if those minutes continue here moving forward. Pacers have their first draft workout here of the cycle. Of course, they obviously got a late start on the offseason. Their first workout today, they'll have 4 forwards and 2 guards. Blake Henson from Pittsburgh, Josiah Jordan-James, Purdue fans will remember that name, from Tennessee. Dylan Jones, Weber State. Zion Poland from Florida. Kyle Rode from Liberty. And the headliner of this group, the All-American guard from Houston, the teammate of Jarris Walker's, Jamal Shed. You talk about unfortunate injury scenes. Shed going down against Duke, ironically enough. I guess John Shire was on the floor against Deshaun Butler. John Shire was very fortunate when Jamal Shed went down with that injury in the Sweet 16. He is easily the headliner of that group. So I think it'll be interesting to watch the Pacers draft workouts. Who do they get to come in with no first-round picks? Are they able to convince some late first-round guys and say, hey, we could be trading up. We'd love to see you work out. Again, Ben Shepherd at 26, Andrew Nemhart at 31. They have found some success in that general range here in recent years. But right now, picks 36, 49, and 50 for the Pacers. A couple other items to note from a baseball standpoint. The Cubs stink, the Reds stink. Mark Dykton and I are betting a 6-pack of beer on said series, so we will do that coming up this weekend in a 3-game set. Other baseball notes, again, we've mentioned this throughout the show. NCAA tournament-wise, get started today. You've got 3 teams here from the state of Indiana participating. Evansville made it. They will be taking on East Carolina. I should say they're in that East Carolina 4-team regional there. Indiana, they've got Southern Miss today. That is a 1 o'clock first pitch in the Knoxville region. I think Tennessee was the number 1 overall seed, if I'm not mistaken, there in the tournament. And then Indiana State snubbed from hosting a regional. Illinois for them, I believe that is a night game down in Lexington for those regionals. So, again, 4-team regions, double elimination. If you advance out of that, you go to a super regional, which is 8 different 2-team super regionals. Again, best of 3 series to try and advance to the College World Series off of that. And lastly, we'll have it on our airwaves. Scotty just walked in studio for the pop quiz. Our coverage noon on Sunday. Scotty, does that sound right? On the streets of Detroit. Again, they've moved that from Belle Isle now downtown. So Roger Penske's home race. We will see how Joseph Newgarden responds. I don't think Indy 500 winners have done great in the immediate race after the 500. Alex Palou is your defending champ up there. That obviously set up a great final couple months of the season for Palou last year. So on track later today, IndyCar qualifying coming up tomorrow afternoon. And like we said, our race, or our coverage, I should say, will begin at noon. All right, it's time for the pop quiz. 4-pack of tickets, U.S. Olympic swim trials inside of Lucas Oil Stadium, and a freebie Friday, Jiffy Lube oil change coming your way. Give us a call, 317-239-1070.
Imagine a child in extreme poverty waiting over a year
Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with KB and Andy. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
Boy, this time last week, it was getting rowdy at Carb Day. I think Boiler Bill had just shown up. Patron shots, starter fuel shots. It was getting a little loopy. But shout out to Kyle, the Pop Quiz. She went 5 for 5 with us last Friday. We'll try for a similar effort. I mentioned these stats a little bit earlier in the show. They're still pretty crazy to me. Shout out to Marshall Pruitt. Does an awesome job covering a variety of racing. But he had this in his kind of all-encompassing piece wrapping up the 500. 7 first-time leaders. So you had 7 new race car drivers lead a lap of the 500. That's the most since the inaugural race. And this kind of shows you the different strategies and the parity throughout the field. If you go to the back 4 rows 8 through 11, those drivers combined to lead 51 laps. Most we've seen in Indy 500 in 50 years. So I found those notes to be interesting there. As again, IndyCar gets back on track later today in Detroit. All right, Nathaniel Finch, you give us a number 1 through 8 here for the Pop Quiz.
Let's go with 4.
4 on a freebie Friday is who?
Logan.
Logan. Is this Logan Rosenberg, or who is this?
No, it's not. No, just Logan.
Just Logan.
No last name.
No last name. Nothing on the birth certificate there. Hey, Logan, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. Did you call in because you want to go to the Olympic swim trials? You heard it was a freebie Friday. You want to challenge your brain? Any of the above?
The free oil change, and sounds like a good time.
Look at that. Well, we appreciate you giving us a ring. We hope you have a great weekend. Question number 1 to Logan. The Fever fell to 1-8 with their loss to the Storm last night inside of Gamebridge Fieldhouse. The leading scorer, Logan, was who? Caitlin Clark, Jewel Lloyd, Nalissa Smith, or Skylar Diggins Smith?
Ooh. Skylar, D?
She played at Baylor, right, Scotty? Mm-hmm. Sorry, Logan, I didn't hear you. Your answer?
B?
B, Jewel Lloyd?
Yeah.
You sure?
No, probably C. This is a good freebie Friday here.
Do you have a young child in the background?
Yeah, we got a couple of young kids in the background, yeah.
Oh, I love it. What are the ages?
9 months and 3 years old.
Whoa. You're in the thick of it on this Friday morning.
Yeah.
Can we get some names? Can we give some shout-outs?
Yeah. Yeah, man, if we need to go to somebody else, we could too.
Oh no, Logan, we're gonna keep at it here. We're gonna fight through it.
All right.
Number 2, I guess we'll skip the names. Number 2 here for Logan. The Mavericks closed out the Western Conference Finals with a win last night at Minnesota. The Mavs are going to face the Celtics in the NBA Finals beginning on Thursday. It's the 3rd trip to the Finals for the Mavs. Man, he really wanted this oil change if he's calling in with a 9-month-old and a 3-year-old. Who did Dallas face in their first 2 Finals appearances? Cavs, Heat, Pistons, or Sixers?
Let's go Heat.
A lot of heat in the car right now. The Celtics 17-5, Logan, in the NBA Finals, while Dallas is 1-1. Can you name the franchise that has won the most NBA Finals series without losing? Nuggets, Raptors, Bulls, or Spurs? And yes, I think a lot of Pacers fans cry at the answer to this one.
Can you repeat those choices real quick?
Yeah, Nuggets, Raptors, Bulls, or Spurs?
Most without losing.
Like I said, Pacers fans, I think we can hear them in the background.
Let's go with the Bulls.
I almost should say, Logan, if you need to get off the line, feel free. We can bear with it. This is probably good for any decisions on the Bowens of wanting to have a 3rd child here, listening to that in the background. Which NBA franchise, Logan, has the most losses in the NBA Finals without winning a championship? So most losses in the Finals without winning a title. Suns, Jazz, Nets, or Magic?
Let's go Magic.
Yeah, no one has ever needed a Freebie Friday more than this one. Logan, to close it out here, May 30th was the traditional day for the Indy 500 to be held before 1971. The race was actually pushed to May 31st when the 30th fell on Sunday. 10 of the 108 runnings of the 500 took place on May 31st, compared to 53 on May 30th. Boy, this is the last thing Logan needs. Logan, can you name the last driver to win the 500 on May 31st? AJ Foyt, Jim Clark, Bill Vukovich, or Bobby Rahal?
Oh, let's go C.
Logan, your effort on this pop quiz is unbelievable. You deserve the 4-pack of tickets to these swim trials more than anything. You deserve the free Jiffy Lube oil change, and it sounds like you need a passy or two, or maybe a bottle in the back seats. Logan, on the pop quiz, what do you get right, Nathaniel? Just the Heat and the Bulls, I want to say? I think that sounds right there.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, Dallas playing the Heat, of course, in 06 and 11, and the Bulls 6-0 in their NBA Finals appearances. I guess you got Nalissa Smith, right, after some hand-holding on number 1 there. That sounded like hell in the car. Gosh, and then Scotty throws May 31st, May 30th at him. So, Scotty, that was a rain race postponed. Like what, almost a full week? Yeah, 6 days. 6 days, the postponement there. Bobby Rahal. Say it again. For TV purposes. Gotcha. Yeah, I was curious about that. So they ran it, tried to run it on Monday, or automatically on Sunday they said push it all the way? First live telecast of the race. So ABC hit them push it back to Saturday. Got it. I guess that makes sense. TV rights reign supreme. All right, we'll close out the great story. Again, the UND baseball program, they are in the Elite Eight down in Cary, North Carolina. It's been a hell of a run for the Greyhounds the last 2 years. Their manager, Al Reddy, joins us next.
Introducing now, reliable internet.
It's a great way to close out the week. We've talked about at various points here on this Friday morning. You've got 3 representatives from the state of Indiana in the D1 tournament getting ready to get underway baseball-wise. Coming up today, that would be Indiana State, that would be IU, and that would be Evansville. But on the south side of Indianapolis, you've got a team that's already made it to the College World Series of the D2 tournament for the second straight year. That is the University of Indianapolis, and the Greyhounds are led by their manager, Al Reddy, who joins us now. Coach, good morning. Congrats. If I would have told you back in February you would be back in Cary, you would have said what?
You know, there was a lot of people doubting us, a lot of people that thought it was a fluke last year, and you know, I knew we had a chance. I couldn't guarantee it back in February, but I knew we were going to be in every ball game we played, and that we were going to have a chance. And you know, we got it done.
It sounds like a group that is maybe not one that has a ton of individual accolades pouring in from an all-league standpoint. Maybe a little small ball action. I guess how would you describe how your team has been built and where you guys are at coming up this weekend?
We have a little saying, and that's spin them into the ground, and that's what we do. You know,
I like that.
You're exactly right. We don't have a lot of individual accolades. I think we had a couple of first-team all-conference pitchers, and I think we had 2 second-teamer position players and an honorable mention, and that's it. You know, for a team that won the GLBC regular season, which is a very, very tough league on the baseball side. You know, it that says a lot, you know, and you know, spin them into the ground. That's what we do. We play small ball. We bunt. We steal in the super regional championship game. You know, we stole second, third, and home all in the same trip around the bases. You know, so that's just what we do.
Well, that is spinning them into the ground. That's the voice of Al Reddy, again, the manager down there at Indy, as they will take on Tampa coming up Sunday in Game 1 of the College World Series. Trying to replicate what the women's golf team did earlier this month at Indy and winning a national title. What did it mean of hosting a regional? I know there's some logistics. You guys had to go down to Bloomington for one of the days there. But what did that mean to you guys of being able to not only get on a run, but, you know, do part of it at home?
Well, yeah, I mean, anybody, baseball, I mean, has a huge home advantage. You know, obviously getting the last swing, no matter where you play, is a big advantage. But playing in your own park is big. Yeah, we had to go down and play at IU the one day, but you know, that's what happens when you get. I think we had 6 inches of rain total in a 3 or 4 day period, and there was just nowhere for it to go. You know, and you know, our field is a nice field when it's dry and it's set up for us. But when you get that amount of rain, it can be difficult. But playing at home and playing at Greyhound Park on the campus of UND is just a special thing to host a regional. We hadn't hosted one since I believe 2001 was the last time we hosted. Now, not because we weren't able to host, it was because of the format. With the super regional format now, you could play on campus. You don't have to have lights. You don't have to have all the amenities that you used to have. So that was big for us, you know, to be able to play at home.
He is Al Reddy, again, the manager of University of Indianapolis. Are you there now, Coach, or when do you guys head to North Carolina?
We are. We flew in yesterday morning and had a chance to get out and see the facility, and we had a practice yesterday over at Campbell University. One of our former players, Justin Hare, is the head coach at Campbell, and I was only about 45 minutes away, so it was good to get over and see him yesterday.
Love that. Your history within the program, you played there. You've been a longtime coach. What, I guess in general, has University of Indianapolis meant to you, not only as certainly a student athlete, but here professionally as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, both my wife and I both attended UIndy, and we just love, you know, all of our friends live here in Indianapolis, and we just love the city. It's a great institution, great education, and it just, I can't even put into words what it means to me. I mean, I've been here, spent my entire life here.
Again, he is Al Reddy, the manager of UIndy. They are the 7 seed coming up in the 8-team College World Series, and they will take on Tampa Sunday at 6 p.m. down in Cary, North Carolina. It sounds like quite the cardiac Greyhounds is what you've had to go through here in your tournament run. Can you share some stories on maybe the clutchness of your squad here to get a berth into the College World Series?
Well, we never quit. That goes back to, the last 2.5 years or so. We just really turned a corner, and a lot of the players that are seniors now, they went through a lot of trying times here, coming out of COVID, as did everybody else, but what a special group of young men. They really don't. They don't quit. Our pitchers keep us in the game, no matter if we're winning or losing. You would never know. We've had a chance to win nearly every game we've played this year. And when you have a group of guys like that just won't ever give up, you're always in the game. And again, we got it done.
The key for you guys in being the last one standing in Cary, North Carolina, what will that be?
Well, again, I think we match up real good against Tampa. The format is such that it's 2 14 brackets, and then the 2 bracket winners meet for the national championship. The key is that this tournament is played over a 8-day period, and so you don't necessarily have to have 5 or 6 starting pitchers. I think we had to have 5 or 4 starts in the regional at our place to get through that thing. But you play, you get a day off, and then your pitchers can come back. Now that's true for everybody else too as well. But I think that's going to play big time for us. We can swing the bats, we can score some runs. As long as we make the routine plays and our pitchers keep us in the game, we'll have just as good a chance as anybody.
Well, it's a great story. I think it's pretty cool that someone that's been so loyal to the university throughout the years is leading that charge. And whether you want to call them the cardiac greyhounds or spin them into the ground, as Coach already says, it's a fun story to watch. Coach, good luck this weekend. Certainly good luck next week. Hope you guys are able to make it through that 4-team bracket and get to the finals.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys.
That's Al Reddy right there. Again, the University of Indianapolis baseball manager back in the College World Series for a second straight year. Again, if you look at it from a D1 standpoint, Indiana State, who really has been a perennial tournament team for the last half dozen years or so, they will be in the Lexington Regional coming up. I believe their game is tonight with Illinois, that 2-3 seed. Again, these regionals are a 4-team region, a double elimination, 1 advances. So that's where Indiana State will be. A lot of people felt like they got snubbed from hosting. And then Indiana will be in the Knoxville region. They got in. Sounded like they were a bubble team. They'll have Southern Miss first pitch for that today at 1 o'clock. And Evansville also got in. So shout out to the Purple Aces. They are in the East Carolina regional as you round out the 3 teams in Division I. Nathaniel, you're rocking a Purdue shirt. Purdue fan?
Yeah, sure am. Whole family went there.
Zach Edey, give me a draft over-under for Zach Edey as I just pulled up the latest ESPN mock draft.
Let's go 25.
25 is the over-under Nathaniel's going for. Jonathan Gavoni from ESPN has Zach Edey as the 15th overall pick to the Miami Heat. I don't think of the Heat as traditional center. I saw Edey mocked, which I think this team has a 25th pick, to the Knicks in a mock draft. That to me seems a little bit more of, I don't know, maybe somewhat of a traditional fit there. But of note here in the mock draft, you had Edey going 15 overall. You had Khalil Ware going 23 to the Bucks. That certainly caught my eye. Dalton Knecht, number 9. Certainly Purdue fans remember that name. And Tyler Kolek, saw him at Hinkle earlier this year with Marquette. He was going 25. One thing to note with the Pacers' first draft workout, again, that's coming up later today. They will have Jamal Shedd, the point guard out of Houston. Dylan Jones, he's a forward out of Weber State. Those guys are projected in this mock at 46 and 49, respectively. Again, the Pacers have picks 36, 49, and 50 in this year's draft. So a thing to note on that end. Any weekend plans, Nathaniel Finch, for you?
Yeah, I got a wedding.
Look at this.
Going down to a wedding.
Nice. Where at?
It is, actually, I'm not sure. I got to figure that out. Somewhere in southern Indiana.
Somewhere in southern Indiana. I didn't realize this Huber Winery is the big deal. You ever been there in Borden where IU had their
I haven't.
booster event earlier this week? That was where Kurt Signetti said Kurt Signetti things. Mike Woodson said Mike Woodson things. And, again, we'll see how the baseball program for Indiana does coming up this weekend. If you're heading out, Indians are at home all weekend long. I know the weather doesn't look ideal for tomorrow, but they'll also be home next week as well. Again, the Fever, that is a noon tip time tomorrow against the Chicago Sky Angel Reese. And I'm pretty sure, let me double check this as we round it out here. Camila Cardosa is also on the Sky roster for those unfamiliar with her. She was the 3rd overall pick in this year's draft, and she has been out with a shoulder injury all season long. I believe there was some chatter about her making her debut against the Fever coming up on Saturday. So we'll see if that happens. Again, that is a noon tip time over at Gamebridge Fieldhouse. It'll be a back-to-back for the Fever as they are off in New York here coming up for a back-to-back before their schedule does lighten up earlier this week. If you missed it earlier, Mark Dykton out at his kindergarten graduation for his middle daughter, Emma. We talked about Colts OTAs. We'll have that recap up not only in podcast form, but also on our website, an article there. I did think it was a small glimpse, as I said to George Bremer earlier in the 9 o'clock hour. Ultimately, I think the defense probably won the day if you're going to pick defense or offense on that end. But I did think you got a glimpse into Anthony Richardson and A.D. Mitchell there on a few hookups there, which I think is certainly something that excites Colts fans. It'll be a 3-day minicamp for the Colts next week, so they'll practice Tuesday and Wednesday afternoon. Thursday at times I've kind of seen, I don't know if Steichen did this last year. I'd have to think back to it. They've altered their schedule a little bit to where Thursday is a quieter day, but that'll be it. June 4th, 5th, and 6th. Then they will go on summer vacation for about a month and a half before they reconvene at Grand Park for training camp coming up in late July. So again, article up, 1075thefan.com, the reasons behind Michael Pittman Jr., Jonathan Taylor. Missing from yesterday's session, Dayo Dengbo had a wedding as well. Don't know if Nathaniel Finch's wedding is on that end, but that was him. Thank you to Greg Rakestraw. Thank you to George Bremer. Thank you to Al Reddy. Everybody enjoy the nice weather on this Friday. Have a great, great weekend. It'll be Mark Dykton and myself, Kevin Bowen, again on Monday.
The Ride with JMV.
I love the 500. I love Carb Day. I don't want to spend anybody's money, but you're going to have to invest even more and understand it's not all about racing that weekend. It is also about the party on Carb Day. Better bands, more finances into that, and understand people are there for racing, and they're also there for one hell of a good time.
The Ride with JMV.
Weekdays 3 to 6
on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
This is Danny Reinhardt with Reinhardt Heating and Cooling. Give us a call for any of your heating and cooling needs. We're here to serve you. 317-745-4526.
Reinhardt is your trusted local independent American Standard Air dealer.
Circle City Whiskey Company seeks out great barrels of whiskey for your enjoyment. Great whiskey, end of story. CircleCityWhiskeyCo.com. Available at select Payless Liquors.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form of Viagra that works just the same but is 95% cheaper? And you can get it online at hims.com/joy. Through Hims, you'll get a free medical consultation to determine the ED medication that's best for you. Discreet shipping if prescribed, a 100% online process, and a range of treatment options, including trusted generic alternatives to the name brands, at up to 95% off. ED is personal, and at Hims, so is treating it. Just go to hims.com/joy and get connected to a licensed medical provider online for free, with zero copay, no expensive appointments, and no awkward face-to-face conversations. To start your free online visit, you need to go to this exclusive address, hims.com/joy. That's hims.com/joy for your free online visit. hims.com/joy.
Hey everyone, it's Jake from Payless Liquors. Charlie said sell it, so stop by one of our 26 locations and stock up with these great deals.